Good evening and welcome to the March 9th Planning and Zoning Commissioners meeting. We have roll call, Shannon, please.
Messina,
Here.
Fleming,
Here.
Ingalls,
Here.
Utrip,
Here.
Mandel,
Here.
Rumpler. Rumpler,
I don't see him yet on Zoom, so. we'll
Ward?
have to-
Nope.
No,
Okay.
doesn't look like he's on there yet.
Can you stand and join me in the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance. Okay, thank you. Is Mike and Lou supposed to be on Zoom, or they're not?
No, Mike is not able to attend. Lewis, my understanding is he was going to participate by Zoom.
Okay,
so-
well, when he joins us. Make an approval for February 9th minutes, please.
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Second.
I have motion first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Or opposed? At this time, public comment can be heard, and that is anything that isn't on our agenda tonight. So if anyone is out there, it's, nope, okay. Hillary, staff comments?
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. So
Good
for
evening.
April, we have quite a few requests that came in. We have 6 public hearing items, so it will be a busy evening. If it looks like it'll be too many, we might have to look at that second window in April for the commission to meet.
That's 6, it's been a long time. I don't think we've had that many in a while.
No, we haven't. It's
Wow.
quite a few.
Okay, great.
That's good.
Any commissioner comments at this time? Okay, moving right ahead. Sean, are you doing a vision? I got an update on here?
I could do a quick one if Sean doesn't, if that's easier. Yeah, otherwise Okay, yeah, that's fine. So just a quick update on that. So we are still looking at dates for a joint workshop with the Planning Commission and City Council, and then also for additional opportunity for public engagement. When we had presented to the City Council at the last meeting, had talked about if we could do it in March, but then looking at March with spring break and all the meetings, that's just not realistic at this point. So we're looking at if April's a possibility. And so we will make sure to do ample notice for what the format will be and how the public can engage in that process as well. But we might need hopefully April will work for one of the joint workshops, but we might even have to push it back a little bit further because we want to make sure that the information that we bring forward is a little bit more refined for the future land use map as well as the policy document.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
And on that note, for future meetings, I know that summer's coming up and we might travel, I don't know. But just let staff know if any of the commissioners are going to be out of town, if they know some dates, so it's not a last minute thing. That's it.
And one more item too on that, we are also exploring for the public opportunity to participate in that at different meeting times. We've heard from some community members that maybe evening isn't the best, and so are there opportunities to do a daytime and an evening or something? So we're looking at other ways to engage the community, just to make sure people have an opportunity to participate that have not already or that still want to participate.
Good, appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thanks.
Thank you. Okay, tonight we're going to do, first thing's a presentation from Parks and Rec. I guess it's an update on the master plan, and Monty, come on up.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
So with the comprehensive plan coming up, we figured we'd come and give you a little update on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan as well, as they go hand in hand. About 2 years ago, the Parks and Rec Department started updating our master plan that was last updated in 2008. We decided to do it in-house instead of hiring out to a consultant, and this is what we came up with. So we took the update before the Parks and Rec Commission back in September. They asked us to go back out to the public to get more comment. We had gone out the previous 2 years and gotten surveys from the public to get their opinions on what they liked about our parks, what they wanted to see more of. And these responses are how we are able to determine if we're giving the public what they need as far as park space and park programming. So we ended up getting another 500 responses when we went out, and interestingly enough, they came out to be pretty much the same as what we had gotten before, just more of it, with the exception of a really strong show of support for pickleball facilities and a water trail. So since our last plan was adopted in 2008, see if I can get this out of the way here, we have accomplished quite a few things since then. So we have adopted a master plan for Landings Park, and we implemented it back in 2009. We did the same with Sunshine Meadows, that opened the same year. We added some facilities for Legacy Park. We did some booster pumps in Bluegrass Park to increase our irrigation to make the grass greener. We changed the disc golf course that was there. It used to be an 18-hole or a 9-hole disc golf course. Had some issues, so we broke that up into 3 practice courses in smaller parks, and then we created a large 18-hole golf course disc golf course at Cherry Hill, which was for a while on the professional golf tour. So we've done some upgrades since then, and it's hopefully be back on that PDGA tour. We've installed a small satellite skate park and some play equipment at Sunset Field. Persons Field had some sports fields added, playground installed, and we did a master plan for that whole area. We did some major improvements to Fippany Park, including a new playground, replaced the gazebo, and some artwork. We acquired Bryan Park from the school district. We created a baseball field, American Legion Field at Ramsey Park. We got new playgrounds at Persons, Memorial, and Ramsey. We've created 5 off-leash dog parks since that time. McEwen Field was completely rebuilt as a community park. Memorial Park has been extensively expanded, added a large new really nice skate park there as well. We bought the Field of Dreams property from the Eagles at Cherry Hill. We added 4 more miles to the Prairie Trail, or we added 4 miles to the Prairie Trail. Another several miles may be coming in the future. We signed a lease with the Bureau of Land Management for some land along the Spokane River, and we have a master plan for that. We have the Atlas Park and Trails, of course, have been added in along the Spokane River. And the accessible trail on Tubbs Hill was built, about a quarter of a mile that you can access, hard-packed gravel, decent slopes on Tubbs Hill so people in wheelchairs and people with strollers can get up there. And we completed the fire road. So we did a trail system for hiking and mountain biking on Canfield trails. We also did the same just for hiking on Fernan, Lake Natural area. We've actually added some new trails this year. A management plan was created for all of our open spaces and adopted a few years back. And an urban forestry plan has been included in our master plan. So we've gotten a few maintenance facilities added to our list here. We got the National Guard Armory, which we use as a wood shop now. And the Parks Department is combined with the Recreation Department. We have 26 miles of bike paths since that plan had been built. So we have a total of 50 miles now. And we've also added 43 miles of bike lanes to our city streets. And we saved about $200,000 doing this plan in-house. So level of service is how we determine what we're giving to the public. So that's usually a standard that's different for every community, and it basically stands for how many acres of parks we have per 1,000 residents. So in the past, we had about 3, our level of service was about a 3, and that was back in 2008. And our parks were getting overcrowded. The city has grown quite a bit since then. And with these surveys we sent out, we've determined that our level of service needs to be higher. And so our goal is 5 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. That would get us to what we need. And Coeur d'Alene's different than other cities. We have a lot of people that come in from out of town and out of state to use our parks. So currently, we're about a 4.7, and we've added about 40 acres of parkland since the last master plan update. So when we project out to what the population may be in 2040, the number is about 85,000. And to keep our 5 level of service, we need to add about another 185 acres of parkland over the next 20 years or so. And this plan addresses those needs. So this plan was designed to be redone in 10 years, but we'd like to use the build-out date 2040 as mile marker stepping stones to get to. So we will redo the plan in 10 years, but we'll still be aiming for 20 years out. So community parks are different than neighborhood parks. They have more amenities, they're larger, they're a draw for people outside of the neighborhood. In our case, they're a draw for people regionally, and those are usually 10 to 40 acres. In the past, or recently, currently it costs about $475,000 per acre to develop a community park. And a neighborhood park's smaller, generally designed for people in that neighborhood, and those cost about $300,000 per acre. So in the next few slides, or later on in the presentation, you'll see proposed parks and where they're at. So we're trying to figure out exactly how far away from parks each person is in town, and we'd like to get our parks within a half mile of every resident, so there's less barriers for people to get to parks. So these are just for development only. Land, of course, costs as well, but we've been really good in the past about getting parks donated by developers or by getting grants to do that. So when we went out to the public and asked them, what their favorite attractions were in Coeur d'Alene, the top 3 were natural areas and parks, which would be like Tubbs Hill, waterfront amenities and trail facilities. What facilities would enhance our community was natural areas was number 1, followed by bike trails and paths, and performing arts venue, which we wouldn't really do in the Parks Department. And we asked, how would you rate the value or the importance of our natural parks in Coeur d'Alene? And it was overwhelmingly, people love our natural areas. When we asked them what 3 things could be added to the park system, more bike lanes and trails, more public parks and trails near water, and more pickleball courts. Y'all know what pickleball courts are?
Tennis for really little people.
Yeah. Or for people that aren't necessarily in the best shape, like me, or older people, like me. So what 3 activities would you like to see expanded? More bike lanes and trails again, and more natural parks. Those are always top of the list. Everything else was pretty close. More disc golf, more police presence, more parks and trails near water, more food trucks was another one that came a lot. They wrote those ones in. Those weren't part of the actual questionnaire. So they wanted to see what specific areas they'd like to see additional natural areas. And along the Spokane River was big. Everywhere was big as well. What specific areas do you want to see trails and bikeways? Everywhere, again, was top of the list, along the Spokane River, Atlas Mill Site, and a north-south trail on the east side of town. And so our Parks Department has gotten pretty large, so we've had to split this map into 2 so you can see them all better. So this shows our current parks to the northern part of the city above I-90. If you can see it behind the menu here. And these are our parks to the south. And this map, it's a little busy. I'll try to explain it for you. The dots represent parks we already have. So green ones are existing sports fields. The blue ones are existing natural areas. Yellow ones are existing neighborhood parks, and the red ones are existing community parks. The big red stars are proposed community parks. These are areas where there's still land available and where we think we could get a nice large park that would fit the community's needs. The smaller orange or yellow stars with the red outline, those are proposed neighborhood parks. And as you can see, we're trying to fill in the gaps that don't have a lot of parks in those areas. And then we have proposed natural areas. And then we also have some blue stars that are outlined in dotted lines. Those show proposed parks that are already planned. They already have a master plan, they're already in the works. Like up here on the northwest part of town, the Trails subdivision, they've already have land set aside that they're going to donate to the city, and they're gonna develop a neighborhood park there. Or we're gonna partner and develop a park there. Over here on the northeast side of town is the Concourse, which is a property that was purchased by a private resident that would like to develop this for public use, and he's partnering with the city to join that to our current Canfield natural area and the Forest Service, their trail system up there, creating a nice area of trails in between those two. There's always been kind of a gap that people just kind of tore up. And then down here is the BLM property that we lease from the BLM. That'd be a community park along the river by Bella Reeve that we have a master plan for but have not started developing yet. So that is the presentation as it is. Does anybody have any questions?
That one red star looked like it's kind of, the center one, looks like it's kind of at the fairground.
Yeah,
What's the thinking there? Some collaborative deal with the county?
no, that's just an area, and these proposed parks are not gonna go exactly, they just show the area where it's needed, and if someday the fairgrounds moved, we would love to get a spot there, but there's other areas in that part of town where you could put a park, like the Interstate Pit, if it ever went away. The area by the landfill would be a good place.
So it's meant to just reference that general area
Right,
in there.
right.
I notice you don't take into consideration the public golf courses that we own. And I would wonder if those wouldn't fall into the same range as pickleball. People are out there, it's fairly well used. And in COVID, they're very well used.
The golf courses?
Everybody's walking on them.
Yeah.
Yes, and riding on them.
That's not part of our Parks Department. I
But
think
it
those,
is a green space and it
Yeah.
is an acreage.
Yeah.
So something to think about in the future.
yeah.
Marty, a couple of items. Can you talk a little bit about the proximity principle?
Proximity principle is the idea that properties that are near parks are higher in value, and the further away you go, the value decreases.
The
Same with-
properties are at higher value.
Yeah, so people would pay more for a house that's right on a park or near a park. It has to do with quality of life, living in a neighborhood that's not jammed with houses. So when you have parks, it's a benefit, and people definitely would pay more for that.
Could you talk a little bit about the Parks Foundation and what they can do and how they can help the city at the benefit of the property developer and the city?
The Parks Foundation helps us whenever we get a new park. We, instead of taking ownership for the city, it goes into the foundation. And that allows us to do several things. Most importantly, it allows us to apply for grants. So if we get a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, it's a 50-50 match, but it's a large grant, so it's a large amount of money, and they take matches. If we own the property, they don't allow us to use that as a match. But if it belongs to the foundation, then we can use that property, the value of that property, as a match towards that grant.
Doesn't it provide a benefit to the company that transfers, that gives the property to the Park Foundation?
Yes, Commissioner, it does. They can get a write-off for that. So,
So-
to answer your question, yeah.
So if the city, as a condition of the special use or the annexation or whatever, if the city requires the developer to provide land to the city, then the city may get it, but gets the land, but they can't use it for grants. In addition, the developer cannot get I hate to say tax credit, it is, but it is. They get a financial benefit
They do.
when they donate, but if we ask for it as a condition of whatever they have before us, it does not happen. I think.
Correct. In a roundabout way, yes. But ultimately, it would be better for those developers to give that land to the foundation, correct? And they get a tax benefit from it.
I guess I'm sort of, we're talking about 20 years adding lots of property. And there are several ways to do it. Every once in a while, we hear things, well, they donate property and we don't like it and whatnot. But I haven't heard for 5 or 8 years anything about people providing property to the Parks Foundation for the write-off. And I think maybe if that still exists, maybe there's some work that you or planning or somebody can do, because would be a great incentive for the developer as opposed to us sitting here and directing them to set aside X number of acres and whatnot.
Right, so Hillary and I talked today, and we've talked about this in the past, to remind those developers that this is available to them if they're interested in going that direction. Right now, the foundation holds the property up on Fernan. They have the deed for that. As Monty's mentioned, it's the trails now, it used to be Hawks Nest. The developer has promised to give us 7.3 acres. And when that comes through, we're going to have them give that to the foundation so that we can, as Monty explained, leverage that as a match so we can get that park built out there.
And one final question. What is we, as the Planning and Zoning Commission, what can we do to help you reach your goal of 5 acres?
Just stay eager to help us acquire land. I think that's about, what we can do. And Hillary and I, we've been talking with Randy a little bit more about how we can do that. Because when we made this presentation to council, Councilman Gookin was very interested in having developers ante up more, really, in essence, is what he said. So there is some desire, it sounds like, at council level to help with that. And now, let me say, the same thing I said at council, was that we've been very fortunate. We've got some really nice developers that have been community-minded, as self-evident by our park system. So can we do better? Always. But for the most part, most folks are really helping out a lot. But I think you're right. You're on the right track to show some benefit and some incentive to help encourage them a little bit.
And one final thing, Monty mentioned about the park up there by Canfield, where a private individual is doing
Concourse,
something.
yep.
Is that working its way through?
Yes, it is.
That is quite, what little I know about this story.
Yeah, so
That's
we've been
quite an
working through that,
interesting
and I
community.
just spoke with the new sheriff, and he's willing to help us out with our law enforcement oversight there. Since it's in the county, our police department was not comfortable handling that portion, so we've spoken with the county sheriff's department, and we've got an MOU that they're agreeable to. And so my next piece of that is I've got to talk with the neighborhood and the HOA because I've spoken with them before. And so once we get through that, it'll go to Park and Rec Commission and then on to council for adoption of that agreement with Jason Evans.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Just a couple of comments. One.
Stay up there, Bill. Don't go
One,
anywhere.
you mentioned when the city reaches the 85,000 number, that we in order to maintain the level of service of 5 acres, that's going to be a real challenge in getting that 185 acres that we would need, along those lines of trying to get land donated, or we get it by however means we can. How important that is, I think is really. The 85,000 that you mentioned is even a subdued number, if you will, because on a sunny summer Saturday, it's not 85,000. There's a lot more people using
Right, and that's what
using our
Monty
park.
was suggesting when he talked about we're a destination, really. And so it's just not our community as a whole, it's our visitors as well.
So, the metric really is based on population of the city, and it's.
Right.
So
And that's hard to measure.
that's comment number one. The other I'd like to mention is a great presentation, Monty. Appreciate that, and really applaud you guys doing this effort in-house, saving the money.
Save
That's
some
really,
cash.
really great. Coeur d'Alene has, a very enviable park system and a great parks department. And when I was a kid growing up in this town, parks were a picnic table and a ball field, pretty much.
Right.
And now all these things that you point out, we've got dog parks, beaches, skate parks, family areas, splash pads, mountain bike areas, on and on and on. The diversity is really impressive, and the maintenance work that you guys do to
Thank you.
keep these parks looking top-notch is very
Appreciate
commendable.
that.
So, well done.
Thanks.
Comment on that too. After the storm, I just want to thank your department and all your hard workers to cleaning up the city as quickly as you did. And there's a lot of little branches and things that break off that, you know, people see the big stuff, but they don't see the little stuff that just remains after the big stuff is gone. And you guys have done a great job.
Well, thank you.
In the Parks Department.
We're still
cleaning
working
them
on it.
up so people can walk safely, because I go to a lot of the parks I walk around, and these little branches are toe kickers, if you want to call them that. So you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks.
Considering the amount of damage that was done in the city at that
So
time.
we're going to start Thursday. We've got a cleanup operation that's going to take us several weeks on Tubbs Hill. And so I've sent a heads up to council about that. And so we are actually going to harvest some logs out of there, and we're going to be able to offset some of our costs and actually maybe walk away with a little bit of money in the kitty that we're going to put into the Tubbs Hill. I have a special line item for that to continue ongoing maintenance. So it's going to take about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks. So we have 5 arborists, 4 arborists, 5. And so we've got some ideas about how we're going to do that. We met with Tubbs Hill Foundation, Department of Lands, some foresters, Urban Forestry Committee for arborists, our arborists, our team, and hashed a plan. And it's gonna be nice. We've got some equipment that we've modified to go down there and gather and harvest logs. We had even the forest department that was helping us, what's
Idaho
Jeff?
Forest Group?
Who's that?
Idaho Forest Group?
Yeah, Idaho Forest Group met us out there and gave us some tips. We thought about using some of their machinery, but we opted not to because they didn't think, some of that was a little too rocky. And so we thought, well, never mind, we don't want to do that. We'll come up with our own plan. So we've got some skids we built for the cable system, and then we converted our superintendent, Jeff Erickson, is a pretty creative guy. We have a vault carrier that we use in the cemetery, and we've modified that to actually be able to pick up large logs and move them. Where right now, it's designed to pick up a large grave box. And so we've done a few modifications to it, and we're real excited. We've tried it out in the yard, and it works really well. So we're going to use that up there. And then after we get all the logs cut to length, we've got a logger who's got a self-loading rig that he's going to come up on the fire road and remove that material.
Oh,
I want to say, when we say harvest, we mean the down trees, not any standing live trees.
Right. Well, and honestly, I'll be forthright. We're going to take the opportunity, if there are trees that look like they should probably come down because they're dead, and they're not a habitat tree, and they look like they're viable, we're going to take the opportunity when we're there to help clean it up. I mean, there's no reason not to.
Sure.
We're not going to get heavy-handed, but we're obviously, we weren't able to burn last year like we talked about. And Kenny, our fire chief, Gabriel, is a little reluctant to do that. And we even talked about doing burn piles, but we believe the couple of chippers that we have, we can chip a lot of the material that we couldn't get to before because of the way we're doing this operation. So we have a large chipper that we're going to use up on the fire road, bring material to it. We have a smaller chipper that we're going to cable down onto the hill, and we're going to chip right there on site as well. So,
good job.
well, thank you.
Good job. Well, hold on.
Okay.
One, I wanted to get a 30-second, 1-minute update on the Atlas Mill site, because I know that you guys have done a great job. I've gone down there. How's it coming along? And
It's come along very well. I mean, you went out there. In fact, Councilperson Wood, who is also on our park commission, asked for an update. We're not quite there yet as an update, because I didn't want to take pictures of seed that hasn't quite germinated. So we still have some things to do. The seed varieties that we put down were just to hold the soil. So we have a bunch of springtime reseeding that we have to do with the proper types of seed. The irrigation system still needs to be fine-tuned. I'm a little concerned about the lateness of which it got blown out, but the contractor is on the hook for the warranty. So we're going to watch that real carefully. But the times I've been out there, the amount of people that are out there enjoying the day when it's a nice day is unbelievable. And so one of the things that, Monty pointed out is in that matrix about who likes what and what they desire here in our community. Atlas Park hits the top 5 in every category. And so this was a great move by our council and Ignite to make this thing come together, because it is everything that everybody's asked for, all in one package.
Yeah, and I agree. I see a lot of people down there on nice days walking, and
Yeah.
dogs are getting used to the park
Yeah,
down there.
yeah, they are.
Going in the water and.
We had a visitor who called about the dog park with not a complaint, but a concern. Is she said, because she's not from around here, said, I took my dog and the fence doesn't go all the way. And I
Yeah.
said, well, you're new around here, and in fact, the water levels do change. And so the water's going to come up, and there's a dock that fence will actually make a closure so that the dogs can't get free. But her dog ran around it, because there's probably 10 to 12 feet of distance between where the dog park begins and
Right.
the riverbed, so.
Right, yeah, and it's gonna look a lot different when the sun is out and the grass is growing, and we're actually in summertime at some
Right.
point in time. My other question, Hillary, is, I know we're doing the comp plan, how is this master plan and stuff tied into all that down the road?
Yes, that's a great question. So this will be adopted by reference, so it'll be part of the comprehensive plan. And one of the things we've talked about in our meeting even today is kind of just looking at their master plan. We already have a copy of that. And so are there any items that we would also want to add into the comprehensive plan? We don't want to duplicate, because obviously it's its own master plan. But if there are action items or things that, if we want to try and help achieve this increased open space level of service, should we be looking at our zoning code or other things like that? So those could be action items in our comprehensive plan.
Great, okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the hard work your whole department does.
Yeah, and I have to say that Mike Kempton helped me a lot with this plan. I should have mentioned that. It was he and I together that wrote it. And if you look at a map of the city, if you look on our city maps, you can see what's in the city and what's not, and what land is available. There's really not a lot left. So we keep an eye on all developments coming through to see if any would be a good fit for parks, and then we ask developers if they'll donate it.
All right, thank you, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks, Marty. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to let you know Commissioner Rumpler has joined the meeting, so he's on Zoom.
okay. Shannon, can you just give a shout out to Lou that he's here with us?
Rumpler?
Here.
Okay, thanks, Lou. All right, moving on to our public hearings, and there are sign-up sheets for each one of the public hearings. If you wish to come up and make any comments on them, hopefully you signed up for those. And at the time, I'll call your name up, and I'll just swear you in and ask you for your name and the city that you live in. And the first one we have is a proposal for a 5-lot preliminary plan known as Meesum Addition in an R17 zoning district, S-3-21.
Mr. Chairman, before Sean
Oh.
starts, I just thought it might be helpful to tell the community members that submitted letters, the comment letters,
Okay.
and ask that they be read aloud, that staff can do that during the public testimony portion of each of the hearing items. But if they wanted to read them themselves and kind of swear in, that's, holds a different level in terms of public testimony versus staff reading their comments. But we're prepared to read those into the record this evening.
Okay.
Okay.
So we might have some people here that have given us letters that are signed
Correct.
up, and they can either read those letters while they're up at the podium if they wish to, which we recommend they do. And if not, any of the letters that either Sean or you're going to read later will just be verbal kind of testimony, but not part
Correct.
of the whole.
And so those will be during that public testimony at the end, after
At the
anybody
end.
in person or on Zoom has testified. Staff will read the additional comments into the record that were specifically
And-
asked.
I'm sorry, and do we have some people signed up on this
Not
particular
on
item
this
on
item.
Zoom?
No, not on this item. We do have some other, on the other items.
Down the road. Okay, great. Thanks, Hilly. All right, Sean, go ahead. Thanks.
All right. Chair. Good evening, Planning Commission.
Good
As was
evening.
alluded to, we do have a subdivision request tonight. It's a 5-lot preliminary plat subdivision request for Meesum Addition, which is a replat of lots 1 through 3, Block 3 of O'Brien's, first addition to Coeur d'Alene. This is found at the southeast corner of 8th Street and Lakeside Avenue. So here is a location map, And you can see that it is located right here. Zooming in, it is this corner. It's important to also know and to point out that Lakeside East-West Street, Lakeside Avenue, turns into 8th Street and heads north here. 8th Street turns here. There is no vehicle access through here, but there is pedestrian access. So this property in the past, it was known as kind of the rear yard of the J.C. White House that was relocated for the museum. And that building has been moved. It can be now found on the south side of the parking lot of City Hall, as well as here near the library. The property is very close to the downtown core as well, so it lends itself nicely to walkability as well as bikeability to the services and parks that you can find downtown as well as NIC. There are findings that need to be made, so before I go into this, it's important to also point out, as Chair Messina had said, that it is zoned C17. It also falls within the infill overlay district. And so that is a little bit of a different animal in how we look at how development occurs. And inside of these infill overlay districts, there is a floor area ratio that determines how big a home or a unit can be based upon the size of that property. So there is a multiplier that is a basic multiplier. If the applicant or the person who pulls a building permit provides the bonus incentives, there's a number of different ones, all the way from like parking under grade to providing pedestrian benches, for example, that they can increase that multiplier up to a certain level. I did provide that in the staff report as well. I highlighted the infill overlay district. This falls within the DOE, which is the downtown east, and it shows a commercial, a residential, and a combined. Since this is R17, the commercial portion does not apply, and it would only be that residential portion that would, if it is approved.
And Sean, I want to thank you for putting that in our staff report, and that does help for us to
It does help.
understand it.
One thing that I didn't put into that, and we did get some public comments on it, is the parking ratios. And we, as a city, reduced our parking requirements a number of years ago. So prior to doing that, the infill overlay district allowed for less parking than what you would normally see for like a multifamily development, because it's based on number of bedrooms. And when you get to a fourth bedroom, it actually dings you more than a regular single-family house would in a regular zoning district. And so what that was designed for was to incentivize smaller and more units. But as we have seen some of the development happen over the years, everywhere from Ice Plant to Trails Edge, sometimes they take advantage of that and sometimes they don't. Right now, the trend seems to be more of the single-family or single-family attached, like townhouse-style development that we're seeing very near this request. And that's what we're seeing right now. So there are findings that need to be made for a subdivision request. The first one is finding B7A, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested by the city engineer. Chris Bosley has attested that it meets those minimum standards. Here is the layout of the lots. As you can see, they have all 30 foot of frontage except for this very first one. It's very close, but not quite. It's 29.84. And a length of almost 110 feet. So they are right around 3,300 square feet, very, very close. The infill overlay district does allow for 15-foot frontages and 1,500 square foot lots. So these are about the double of the size that the code would entertain, could be approved if approved by Planning Commission. Finding B7B is that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are or are not adequate. So on pages 4 of 5 of your staff report, you can see the comments that were provided by our departments. There are comments from stormwater, streets, water, wastewater, and fire. Suffice it to say that none of our departments felt that there was something that would get in the way of development here. It is very close to downtown, and a lot of these facilities already exist. All right. So this is a map showing where the utility extensions would be made. Water connections are here in Lakeside. There is one existing water connection that would remain for Lot 2. 4 other ones would be added, 1 per lot. There is an alley there that does have a slight angle to it as you get into the property here. That is where the wastewater main would go, and the sewer connections to both the north and the south would be made in that location. Suffice it to also say that there is a fence that's in our right-of-way. It is fencing off our street trees. You can see later as I get to the proposed conditions that we request that be removed or relocated outside of the city's right-of-way so that the public can take advantage of the full width of that right-of-way and the street trees. Finding B7C is that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all of the subdivision design standards, which can be found in Chapter 16.15, and all of the subdivision improvement standards that are found in Chapter 16.040. And engineering did review this, and they said that it has been vetted for compliance. Next finding is B7D, is that the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do or do not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. So we have alluded to a few of the things that an infill overlay district does. It is in the DOE. There is a floor area ratio that determines what size or how much floor area can be provided on a lot. There is no limit to the density. So if you can park it, if you can meet your setbacks and height, you can divide that up into as many units as are feasible. Many times when they go down that path where there's single ownership of one large lot, you get a lot more units that end up either in single ownership or condoed later. So in this style of development, there are specific lots, you know, that there are going to be 5 lots, and what they decide to do with those lots will be based upon that floor area ratio. All right, so here's the zoning map showing that C17 area here is the subject property. This blue outline is the DOE infill overlay district boundary. And then downtown Coeur is right across the street to the west. And on pages 7 and 8, that is where our discussion was about the floor area ratio and the other items that I provided in the staff report. So there are 8 conditions that were proposed by our departments. Engineering, actually a gentleman reached out to us and provided us public comment that I can read into the record if he is not here to provide it himself. But he did point out that the fence was not in the right location, so our engineering department agreed and made a request that must be moved prior to the plat recordation. The other ones are pretty, what we would normally see at the time of a subdivision approval, that all main extensions the expense would be borne by the developer, and the existing service can only feed the one lot. Wastewater, these are pretty typical requirements, that one sewer lateral per lot, that sort of thing, and that the access be paved, which the alley would be if approved. So with that ends my staff report. The public notice was provided, and Planning Commission must consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. Your finding worksheets are attached, and I am here for questions if there are any. Go ahead.
Sean, do you mind, just for the benefit of the public and for us also, just to remind us what the purpose is of the infill overlay districts and why we have those?
Sure. I did provide this. I put it on a slide, but it looked like it was about 2 font. So
Maybe
give me
summarize.
give me just a second.
I
can-
appreciate it, having it in
pull
here
that
as a
up.
reminder, but I think just for the benefit of the public to understand
Absolutely.
what those are for.
All right. All right, so I will read into the record 2 parts of the infill overlay. First is there's 3 infill overlay districts. There's Midtown, Downtown North, and Downtown East. This is in the East one. What the infill overlay districts are, and then specifically what the DOE is. So the first one is, the title of this article shall be Infill Overlay Districts. The purpose of these regulations is to establish infill overlay districts and to prescribe procedures where the development of lands within these infill overlay districts can occur in a manner that will encourage infill development while protecting the surrounding neighborhoods. It is the intent of these development standards to encourage a sensitive form of development and to allow for a reasonable use that complements the visual character and the nature of the city. And as for Downtown Overlay East, is the intent of this district is to create a transition between the downtown core and the residential areas to the east. Infill development is encouraged, including urban housing, example townhomes, courtyard housing, and cottages, with a height limit that is compatible to lower scale development. However, it is intended that the development within the district consist of sufficient density to warrant the provision of parking below grade. So that's why we had a reduced parking standard for tiny units, is because we were expecting much more density with parking below grade. Moreover, a limited array of goods and services are appropriate to serve the neighborhood. Traffic calming measures would be applied, and there would be an emphasis on preserving existing large trees and providing new ones.
Thank you.
Is that out?
Yep.
Sean, when did we create this? You have or Hillary, when about?
Is it 2007?
2006 or 7
Yeah, it's
is
right
it
in
was
that timeframe.
right before I started in
Yeah.
around 2005, so it was right about then.
And are we looking to update this any or change any? I haven't heard anything, but with the new comp plan and the way things have changed downtown a little bit, or?
It's a different form of development. We have, when initially some of the projects went in, specifically the edge, the trail's edge, there was some feedback that we got. There was a group that was created at the time that thought that that was too dense and too tall. At the time, they asked for a height variance. And that was back when we allowed height variances. They asked for a 2-foot height variance. They ended up not needing it, but it filled the room. It created a lot of controversy, and the actual outline of that district changed and was reduced at that time. Since then, we haven't gotten a lot of negative feedback on it, and it seems to be functioning very well.
Okay, great. Okay, all right. Okay.
John?
Thank you for your presentation, Sean, very well done. Question, just a clarification I'd like you to help me with. A couple comments that I've read that have come in from emails attached to our packet and so forth. I've referred to this as a person says, refer to this as a rezone. Just for clarity, this is not a rezone, correct?
It is not a request for rezone.
So a rezone is a more stringent process. We make a recommendation, it goes on to council. Rezone looks at the comp plan and a lot of other elements besides just whether or not, requirements have been met. This is not a rezone, correct?
Correct. Generally, what a rezone does is it is a request for a change of use. So it is something where the use wouldn't be allowed in that existing zone, so they request a more intense zone to allow for commercial or manufacturing or something of that nature.
And if I could, as sort of a notion of the intensity of the development or whatnot, and one of our findings is whether the 5 lots would meet the zoning requirements. And if I've done the math right, I think it's 0.38 acres, and if you do the math at R17, I think we'd be allowed 6.46 units, something like that, correct?
Yeah, and that's where the floor area ratio kind of gets in there. So if you want separate ownership of lots, you could request a 15-foot frontage and a 1,500 square foot lot. So this is about double that requirement.
Right. So the requirements of the applicable zoning district have been met.
They have.
Thank you.
Sean, you had a picture up there earlier, it showed where this property is in it. It showed the buildings that were on Sherman, right to the, essentially to the south of the property. Could you show that again?
Not sure which one you were talking about, because there's not.
Well,
This?
well, that's good enough.
Okay.
So there's several buildings right down the bottom right-hand side there. The ones that are in the subject property, they're going to be very similar to that, are they not? The closeness of the buildings and the width and so forth?
The lot size are very similar in nature,
It's just
in
sort of a
size.
continuation of what has already been approved.
You could view it that way, but the architecture could possibly be
I'm not
different.
thinking about the architecture, I'm thinking about, houses that are fairly close together on small lots. They use the alley as to getting into their property, et cetera.
Yes,
It's not a gigantic change, at least in my opinion.
right. You can see, this is Sherman 5 West. This is a 29.95, which is very close to the 30 feet that is requested tonight. This corner lot is 34.95, so very similar.
You'd mentioned something about commercial versus residential.
Yes.
Does that apply to this area here?
It applies to the infill overlay district, but not specifically to the
My
zone.
specific question is that may or may not be related, but there's some concern about this being vacation rentals or short-term rentals. But we also have a motel that's pretty close to there. We have a bread and breakfast right across the street. We've got one on the other side of 8th, which those are all short-term rentals. So if this person wanted to put a motel in there or a bed and breakfast, would there be anything that would restrict them from doing that?
So a motel would require either a special use permit if it was allowed in R17, or they would request a zone change. Usually you can do one or the other. It's a great question. And so here, let me point out, since I pulled up this zoning map. So the existing zoning that is underneath the infill overlay district determines what uses are allowed. And then the infill overlay district itself changes that type of development and the setbacks and heights, but the use is still determined by what that underlying zone is. And this is a residential zone. It's R17.
What I'm making, I guess I'm trying to make, or see if there is a connection between short-term vacation rentals and other type of things, and motels and whatnot. Because there's been some conversation, at least I've heard of, and even with the council, about short-term rental issues. And I think you all are somebody's looking at that in some fashion.
So the city of Coeur d'Alene has never really defined or required that somebody use a property in a manner where the city would be determining ownership. There's nowhere that I know of that says this must be a rental, or this must be a short-term rental, or this can't be a short-term rental. Usually the city will allow, like, a homeowners association through their CCNRs to determine the type of ownership. So that allows condominiums that can be private ownership where the land is held in common ownership. You could use it as your own home, or you could rent it out, and even short-term, since the short-term rental ordinance was passed. Does that help answer your question?
Well, sort of, it just,
Mr.
Or
Chairman,
you want to add to that?
If I may, yes, so we do have the short-term rental ordinance in place, and the state has basically said we can't treat it as a business. It has to be treated as a home occupation, basically. So we're not regulating it like a commercial operation. And so as long as somebody can comply, and there are short-term rentals in that vicinity, and some of the single-family detached homes, townhouses, we have vacation rentals throughout the city. They just have to apply for the permit and comply with the requirements that we have stated, including the fees. And then, good neighbor policies and all of that.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. So it is also different than, like Sean said, so a hotel or something would need different zoning. And the bed and breakfast, I believe, needs a special use permit in R17 as well, right?
I believe so. In most districts, a bed and breakfast is by special use.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
So the applicant will be up next to speak. He had requested, I believe, this slide. Thank you.
Okay. Come on up, bro. I'll swear you in.
Okay,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just state your name and the city you live in, please.
Russ Helgeson, and I live in Coeur
Just the
d'Alene.
city. No
Pardon?
address, just the city you live in. City of
Coeur d'Alene.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Russ Helgeson with Freeman Smetana Engineering, representing the owner, Allard Meesom, who's in the back here. And I think we have some people watching on Zoom that are part of the team that's kind of designing or kind of putting this whole project together. A lot of what I was going to say, Sean has already covered, but the plan is to make a residential development or subdivision, real similar to what you just looked at, those Sherman 5 East and West, same size lots, almost identical, 30-foot wide, kind of townhousey look, kind of a look. And kind of as Commissioner Ingalls pointed out, that we are not requesting a change in zoning. This is all planned to be under the existing zoning. Just kind of wanted to kind of focus a little bit on this plan. This was a construction plan that kind of worked with the city staff, submitted it to kind of as the improvements that need to be done as part of the subdivision. This alleyway for years had been vacated, and it just within the last year has been deeded back to the city, so that the city owns that alleyway. That funny little jog is only because there's a large power transformer in the southwest corner of the where this development is. So rather than trying to move a large transformer, we actually deeded it, that funny little triangle down at the bottom rather than having the alley go straight. And so, kind of with the improvements, there's a very old sewer line in that alleyway that will be replaced with a new sewer line and manhole with services for the 5 new lots to the north. And then we spoke with the owner, that the person that owns the property to the south, and there's 2 buildable lots at this point, and so we're going to put sewer services to those 2 lots at the same time. Also in the alley, right now there's overhead utilities. I think it's more communication stuff. It's not the power itself. I believe that's already underground. But we'll be coordinating with the utility providers to bury those in the alley and get rid of all the overhead power or all the overhead utilities there. And then kind of once all that construction's done, the alley will be paved, and the access onto 8th Street right now, it's smaller, so that'll be replaced with a wider approach. Going back to the water, I think Sean already mentioned, but there is one existing water service that will be serviced at lot 2 there, and then 4 new services would be installed also. And then also on the northeast corner on Lakeside, there's 2 old existing driveway approaches into the property. Those will be removed, and new curbing and sidewalk will replace that. So there will be no driveway access off of Lakeside. In fact, kind of the staff meeting that we had when we first talked about this, we were told that we need to have off-street parking needs to be from the alley, which matches what's just to the east of here, those developments that have been done in the last few years. So all off-street parking will be off of the alley there. So that kind of covers the improvements, and then we're fine. Removing that fence is not an issue. So really, I don't have a lot more to add other than kind of the conditions that are proposed in the staff report. Those are all very agreeable to the owner, and we believe that we've met all the conditions that are needed to for the findings there, and we ask for approval by the commission or recommended approval. So unless you have other questions for me.
I do.
Sure.
Is there any plan to preserve some of the large growth trees? I mean, I know it's all a lot of trees.
Yeah.
But are some of them
Well,
able to be
There
preserved?
are several trees actually to the west of the property line, between the fence line and the property line. And I think the only other ones are kind of the shrubbery ones up towards Lakeside. And those may or may not, we really haven't discussed that, but I think kind of just the type of development, which is similar to those Sherman 5 developments that are just kind of kitty corner, that there's not a lot of room to preserve big trees.
Okay. We'll have you back if there's any more
Okay? Great.
questions, but we're
Thank
good
you.
right now. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I have Alan Meesum, of course, in favor, did not want to speak at this time. I have no one else signed up on here.
I don't have anyone online, so I guess at this
Okay.
point, we would have staff read the comments,
you wanna-
the letters that they asked to have read
And
aloud.
Before we read these, I just got a question for Randy on these. This is the first time since I've been on this commission, letters have been asked to be read in. Is this what, I don't want to set a precedence here of someone just sending in letters and having staff keep reading these. I'm all for, if you can't make a meeting, you can certainly send in a letter without these said, please read these, or come to the meeting and come up to the podium and share your thoughts. So I just want to get a little clarity on this.
It is an unusual circumstance. I think it was placed on the agenda.
No, it was in the public notices, so
In the public notice, it was said that people could send in comments to be read. So that's not a usual circumstance, and does not have to be followed in the future.
Okay, so
But
is
but
the,
since it was mentioned in the public notice, that's why we're doing it.
so is the public notice always said, send in and they can be read, or is this?
no, staff added that as a courtesy with COVID, just because of the
I see.
difficulties of people attending in person or on Zoom. So we did it. We've only had one previous meeting where we had one individual ask to have their comments read aloud, so
And
we
it
have
is
quite a
somewhat-
few this evening.
Somewhat unusual because generally comments during a public hearing are sworn testimony.
Yeah.
And there's no way to swear the people in who have written letters.
All right,
So it's just additional information for the commission, but it's not sworn testimony.
okay. Go ahead.
It may
Go-
change for future ones too, if it, if it becomes a little excessive, and it
Yeah.
would be nice to hear from the individuals rather than staff reading from letters, but.
Okay, great, thanks. Go ahead, Peter.
Mr. Chair, I agree with you about that. There's a significance of public testimony, be it in person over Zoom, and that is lost sometimes in the written things. And when you said to be read, I would interpret that as to be read by us. Because when we do get the written comment, it is provided to us and we read it. And we digest it and we, I think, act accordingly as we think is right. So I would encourage people to continue to send things in if they want us to read it, but I don't think reading aloud is not it. But I speak even stronger, if you have a strong feeling about something, come down and testify or testify over Zoom. There's nothing quite like hearing your spoken voice, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with that. There's a lot of unspoken things through body language that you can pick up on, and this doesn't necessarily provide that context.
Right. You're
We
reading
always encourage people to show up or be on Zoom if possible.
Yeah, you're just reading someone else's comment at this point in time, really.
I'm
And,
happy to do it.
And we've read, I mean, we all read these, I believe, and, okay, Sean, go ahead.
All right, here we go. We have lived at 811 East Lakeside Avenue for over 15 years. During this time, we've watched the subject block across from us evolve from business to residential. We oppose the zoning change and the Meesom proposal for development on the northwest corner along Lakeside. Housing and community. We are disturbed to see the proposed change from 3 single-family homes to 5 townhouses. The 3 homes and families on the northeast quarter of Lakeside have enhanced the neighborhood. We look forward to completion of the block with 3 single-family homes in keeping with the 3 existing homes. The city planning's objective is to provide a sense of community with more housing for people who work and contribute to the community. This project fails that objective. Most of the townhomes along Sherman on the southeast quarter of the block and the south side of the block to the east are nightly short-term rentals. In the absence of zoning restrictions, the proposed units will likely be nightly or short-term rentals. The only outdoor space would be in the fronts of the townhomes. This suggests there will be large patios in the front similar to those found on the Sherman townhouses. We know from experience with the Sherman townhouses that these are attractions for large groups and loud music. In essence, this project puts businesses inside a residential neighborhood. This type of development does not fit the Lakeside neighborhood or the Garden District as a whole. It is deeply concerning that the approval of this project would set a precedence for similar developments along Lakeside. Parking. What is the parking plan for this proposed development? The block along Lakeside and 9th Street is packed with cars during the summer from the nightly short-term rentals on Sherman. Owners and employees of businesses across 8th and Lakeside behind Zips park on Lakeside and 8th every day. There are countless examples of inadequate parking around the city for high-density development. This is an issue that seems to never be resolved. Trading parking spaces for a decorative bench or a bike rack does not solve the problem. Traffic. Traffic in the neighborhood has increased over the years, and the proposed development will bring more. Southbound drivers are prone to not slowing at 8th and Coeur d'Alene, taking the curve at 8th and Lakeside and gunning it along Lakeside. They slow at 9th and Lakeside only if they are turning. Sorensen Elementary School is within a block of the proposed development. Students walk to and from school every day and occasionally through the neighborhood on field trips during the day. The unprotected intersections at 8th and Coeur d'Alene and 9th and Lakeside will become even more dangerous. City land. We notice from the property listing that the buyer has included city property as a bonus to purchasing the corner lot at 8th and Lakeside. We didn't realize it was a practice of the city to give away city taxpayer property. This is an irresponsible use of taxpayer money, and to what purpose? This is a generous amount of land that could be used for a project to benefit the community, not just one owner. One Lakeside neighbor has suggested a pocket park and/or a turnout for the city bus stop, both great ideas worth pursuing. It is disturbing to know an investor can buy property in an existing neighborhood with clear zoning guidelines carefully established by the city, and then easily flip that zoning to his desire with the blessing of the same city. Please protect our neighborhood and further the city's goals of building housing for people living and working in the community. We urge you to deny this zoning change and the Meesom proposal. We ask that it remain at 3 lots, single-family homes, as originally platted and deeded. In addition, keep the city taxpayer-owned land on the west side of the property within the purview of the city. Plan the space creatively and practically to enhance downtown and the Lakeside neighborhood. The time to do it is now. Thank you, Carl and Lyndall Cook.
Do you have any comments on the city land portion of this, or?
Well, that's where the request and the condition that staff has requested be made to remove the fence. That's what they're talking about.
Okay.
So that would return those street trees and that land back into the public, to the public hands.
Okay.
Speaking of that, just so Planning Commission knows, Any owner can request a vacation of property. We see those from time to time. They don't necessarily come to planning commission, they go to a city council. But there are times when alleyways are no longer functional and we will vacate an alley, or a street doesn't line up correctly, and they'll ask for a vacation of city property. Sometimes it's approved, sometimes it's not. Other times the city does the exact opposite when they annex in a property, let's say along Atlas, for example, and the right-of-way kind of does one of these things. We'll ask or request that they deed part of their private property to the city so that that right-of-way is accurate and the same,
Right.
north, south, or east, west.
And we've had a few of those.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. You need to add anything on that, Hillary, or we're good?
I think we're good.
Okay, great.
Okay, number 2, NISM zone change request. Dear Sir or Madam, please read this letter out loud at the Planning Commission meeting that will be considering the MESM proposal and request for a zone change. I am writing to oppose that zoning change request, which would allow more than 3 single-family homes on the lots just east of 8th Street facing Lakeside Avenue. The city too frequently makes changes to established requirements just because some developer sees a chance to make a few more dollars. The benefits of this requested change are vague and questionable. The negative impacts are obvious and numerous to those of us who live nearby. Other objectors, more eloquent than me, have and will point out that the drawbacks of approving this request. Please listen to us for a change and tell the developer that our zoning regulations, developed after years of hard work, are not to be overturned at the whim of one deep-pocketed person, just so those pockets can be filled a little more. Thank you, Tom Anderson. Okay. So we have to the Coeur d'Alene Planning Commission. We are the owners at 812 East Coeur d'Alene Avenue in the name of the Murphy Family Trust, and would like to raise an objection to the plans for a 5-lot preliminary plat known as the MESM Addition at 810 East Lakeside Avenue. We are a short walking distance to this property and have seen the negative impacts of vacation rentals on and near Sherman, especially the noise factor from front of house outdoor entertainment areas. We have seen an increase in traffic from existing townhomes, and adding even more would make it more dangerous around the unprotected intersections nearby. The downtown area should maintain its character that matters in a community that takes pride in its history and image. High-density townhouses packed along Sherman not only sets a bad precedence for more to be built, but it takes Coeur d'Alene one step closer to becoming its California cousins that so many people fear. We rebuilt our house recently and went to great lengths to maintain architectural integrity with other homes in the downtown area. We respected the history and paid a premium for the greater good of the community, allowing for 5 packed townhouses instead of what the property deed states to allow single-family dwelling with accessory unit in the back would be another step towards tarnishing the look and appeal of downtown Coeur d'Alene. The City Planning Commission is in place to make hard decisions for what is best for the community, and this is a moment to make the call on behalf of local residents. We ask that the Planning Commission deny the zoning change and the development proposal, and that the block be completed with the 3 single-family homes as platted and deeded. Dennis and Julie Murphy. All right, and this one is pretty small font, so you might have to bear with these old eyes for a moment. Just want to see how many more we have. Okay, this, I believe, is the last one.
There's one more after that one,
Oh, is there?
the back of the packet from Jeff Daly. If you don't have that one, I can give you that one after.
Oh, okay, because I have, and it looks like 2 pages of the same person. Is that what you're seeing?
So I have this one I think you're gonna read, that's the tiny font.
Uh-huh.
And then there's one other one that I don't believe you've read.
The last one is from
Has the
Tom
highlights in it.
Anderson.
That one.
Oh, okay. I'll come grab that. Okay, this property has been zoned for 3 single-family residence lots since the early 1900s. Alan Meesum, an investor from Texas, has purchased the historic J.C. White House property and now wants to change the zoning from 3 single-family residence lots to 5 high-density townhome lots. The request to rezone this to 5 lots is out of contrast with the beautiful Garden District designation here in Coeur d'Alene. I don't believe that Mr. Meesom intends to reside in one of these units or ensure that they each will be owner-occupied and contribute to a sense of neighborhood. My name is David McDonald, and in August 2018, I built a home at 814 East Lakeside Avenue. This property is directly adjacent to the east property line of these parcels. I paid a premium price to purchase a new home in this neighborhood and to be close to the top-rated elementary school and enjoy the quaint neighborhoods and architecture of the Garden District. In the 1900s, the forefathers of Coeur d'Alene had a dream and a vision for the residents of this town by their careful zoning, especially with the properties located in the Garden District. This is still true today. It's the quaint in an old-fashioned and charming way, and the city and layout that visitors to Coeur d'Alene envy. We don't need high-density nightly rental units here on Lakeside Avenue and the adverse effects it will add to a neighborhood. We don't need the loud noise and parties that will most likely occur from this possible rezone change. I have young children in school, and the negative impact from the noise and street parking is not why I moved to this location. We don't need the added traffic and potential impact on our police department for added calls resulting in disturbing the peace. We need people that are in owner-occupied homes that are part of the neighborhood and look out for each other and each other's property. The rezone request does not state why this out-of-state investor wants to change the property from 3 lots to 5 lots. The obvious answer is greed. There is certainly demand for the already approved 3 single-family homes on these lots. It would be no trouble to sell them. I am sure that the developer will never propose a deed restriction that requires the 5 future dwellings units be owner-occupied. I searched the entire country from San Diego to Boston, from Florida to Bain, Washington, looking for the perfect atmosphere to raise my family. I found Coeur d'Alene with the charm, the quaint atmosphere of a hometown, with the church and school within blocks. I love the mature trees and the homes that are owned by individuals with families such as mine that have a sense of ownership here. I spent over 40 years in law enforcement, and as a city policeman in a major city, I know what happens when residential neighborhoods are rezoned and become short-term rentals. Problems created will really never go away. We don't need the added traffic, street parking, and potential impact from potential disturbing the peace calls to our already busy police officers. It should be noted that on the west side of these properties in question, there is a large wooden fence which the previous owners of the property had placed on city property. This fence is a dilapidated and an eyesore and should be removed from the city property as soon as possible. The previous owner was well aware of the encroachment of that fence on city-owned property. It was added to as a selling point to his real estate listing on that particular lot. I am also a victim of the prior owners using and stealing my property as well. I live on the east side of said property, and the same type of old wooden fence was built 2.5 feet on my property. The owner never had the courtesy to inform me about this encroachment, taking 250 feet of my property. Last summer, I had to insist on the fence being removed from my property. I had to remove my new fence and landscaping and replace it on the west side of my home at my own expense, costing approximately $2,500. It is my prayer that the planning department and the commissioners don't allow this blatant request for zoning for a personal monetary gain from an individual that does not even reside within the city or state. This is one of the few places in the nation that is still unique to families, with charm and a quaint atmosphere, with neighbors who look out for each other and each other's children, where the people look out for the safety of the neighborhood. I pray the commissioners of the Planning and Zoning Commission will not destroy what we have here. Respectfully, David McDonald. Okay, so I believe this is the last one. My name is Jeff Daly, and I am the homeowner of the single-family residence built in 2018 on the corner of 9th and Sherman. I would like these comments read during the public hearing on the Alan Meesom 5-lot rezone request on Tuesday, March 9th. I was excited to see the 3 lots on the former J.C. White property listed last year in June. The real estate listing on each lot stated that the deed restriction allows single-family dwelling with accessory unit in back, no multifamily units, with apartments or condos. This really fit in nicely with the 3 adjacent properties on the east side of the lots. Each is a single-family owner-occupied residence that has an additional dwelling unit in the back. All 3 single-family residences built in 2018 have 3-car garages and an additional concrete parking pad. I am excited to see the city have the old wooden fence removed from the east side of the sidewalk that encroaches the city taxpayer property on the west side of those lots. That property can be useful to make into a city park, J.C. White Pocket Park, or add an additional city bus pull-out or bus stop. It could also be used to widen the street, adding a parking and a biking lane. Relocating the bus stop on 8th Street out of the curve would be much more efficient and safe, especially for those with disabilities. I am opposed to the request to rezone the 3 lots into 5 lots. This would be the first time this has been done on the south side of East Lakeside Boulevard. It would set a precedence on the street. It would adversely affect the neighborhood with large increases in vehicles, street parking on East Lakeside Boulevard. The developer needs to provide a clearly defined parking plan for these lots. The other big issue would be noise created if allowed to build large front patios right up to the sidewalk like the East Sherman and West Sherman townhouses. The city has good intentions to look at creating more density to create more places to live. The problem is that creating this type of housing in family neighborhoods downtown leads to investors buying the property and placing the primary unit in nightly rentals with no intent to ever occupy it. A great example are the 5 townhouses called Sherman East constructed last year. 3 units were purchased by one individual and immediately placed in nightly rentals with a property management company. You can look them up on Seasons Fine Property Management website. They are listed as Sherman Avenue A, Avenue B, and Avenue C. They are the 3 units painted white. The other unit was purchased by an individual and put in a rental pool. In summary, 4 of the 5 Sherman East townhouse units have never been owner-occupied since being built last year and most likely never will. This goes against the spirit of the city's intent to allow higher density in some areas to create housing opportunities for people wanting to live in this beautiful city and not adversely impacting its neighborhoods.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
I also want to point out there's a couple letters in our package that are supportive of this project as well.
There is, they did not request they be
Right.
read aloud.
But I just wanted to point that out
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Russ, do you want to come up and address anything that you heard Sean speak of or read?
Yeah, just real quick.
Okay. This is your last and final chance.
Yeah, again, Russ Helgeson. Just a couple of comments regarding traffic. All we can go by is the city engineer who, in the staff report, indicates that both streets have available capacity for additional traffic. So, I mean, that's, as designers, that's what we've got to follow, is kind of what the city engineer says. And I know that we've already talked about it, but quite a few of those letters talked about zone change, and we are not requesting a zone change. Also to set clear, that area between Lot 1 and the yellow line where the fence is, that's public right-of-way. We are not asking to vacate that. We're not trying to sneak it into the property. That we realize that is city right-of-way. So it's not being part of the subdivision. It's part of city right-of-way. It actually will become more usable to the city once that fence is removed. Several comments were kind of saying that a lot of the lots are not owner-occupied, and we've already had that discussion before I even got up here. It's just someone that buys and develops lots and sells them has no ability to tell someone you can't use it as a rental or you have to live in it. It's all through the city. It's through everywhere. I mean, and again, kind of this is more just kind of listening to these letters being read out loud when there is positive comments that aren't being read out to the public that might be listening. It kind of there's the possibility of skewing opinions. So it doesn't seem, kind of takes away from the fairness of a hearing by reading specific letters that are requested and not reading other letters. So that's just more of something that kind of came in my mind while I was listening to that. So, and again, just kind of final, we're not asking for something that's different that hasn't been approved, kitty corner to this development. Those Sherman East and West lots, those have already been approved by the city. It's in the same neighborhood. So again, I request or ask that you guys, as you review everything, that you would see to approve this development. So with that, unless there's other more questions,
No? Any questions? All right, thanks, Russ.
Hey, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to close public testimony at this time, bring it to the council, the commission for discussion and a motion.
I'm
Go-
going to speak up, if I can.
And go right ahead.
Okay. Generally, you've proven your case, and we ticked all the boxes, but I run into a real hard wall at 870. The lots proposed in the preliminary plat meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. And yet I refer back to page 7 of our infill overlay districts. Protecting the surrounding neighborhoods. It is the intent of these development standards to encourage a sensitive form of development and to allow for a reasonable use that complements the visual character and the nature. I call this scope creep. I think we've creeped a development that doesn't really belong on a residential street. We've allowed to flip it off of a very busy Sherman onto a residential, almost a cul-de-sac lifestyle. And I'm a big advocate of townhomes here. I'm a big advocate of condominiums. I like alternative ways of living, but I do not like when you upturn the neighborhood. And I disagree with, yes, we ticked all the boxes, agreeable, but you've just heard an outstanding response from the neighborhood that said, we don't want this. And 3 good-sized residential lots can be developed 3 beautiful homes and complete the street that is all single-family dwellings. I think this is a place that is not deserving of 5 units that will encourage day and night flipovers. It is what we do here. We jam them in and we turn and churn, heads on beds. And I just think this is the wrong place. It's an unusual street in that we do have a turn in the street, and it's almost like a little cul-de-sac. So when I saw this, I struggled. I said, yep, we're ticking all the boxes, we're doing all the infill, but I think we've changed the impact. I think we've now interned a non-historic treatment. If I knew what this building looked like, but I got a feeling it's going to have a shed roof, or it's going to have your basic box on box, and that to me is not this neighborhood. And I think, where do we stop? Where is it okay to reach into a historic neighborhood, and where do we stop? I think this is where we stop. So I see impact on the historic neighborhood. I don't think we're protecting the neighboring properties, and I think we fail to complement the visual character of the neighborhood. I think we need to be sensitive to this locale. It is unusual. It is neighborly. It is walking. It is not people parked out on the front street on their patio. It's the kids sitting on the porch on the front steps, but it's not a whole array of urban lifestyle that needs to be there. So I'm an advocate on the flip side, because I don't think I was hearing it until we read those letters. Everyone else was, yeah. So I want to see, I don't understand the profit section. Go for 3 units and sell good land. That's my theorem.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yep.
Go ahead, John.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and as I go through the staff report and listen to Sean's presentation, the 4 findings for a subdivision are typically check the box. They're usually very objective in nature, as opposed to a special use permit or an annexation, zone change, where we're evaluating neighborhood character, we're evaluating density, we're evaluating comp plan objectives and that sort of thing that get fairly subjective. My experience sitting here, as we do subdivisions, it's a lot more objective. It's a lot more check the box, as you say. And in this case, you know, the city engineer has attested that the preliminary plat requirements have all been met. He's looked at that plat right there, and, you know, the width of the lots are nearly 30 feet. They exceed the 15-foot minimum. There are 3,300-foot lots that exceed the minimum. So, you know, my analysis of this thing is that we kind of go down a checklist, and this really isn't about whether or not there's noise or no noise, or whether there's going to be patios, or, you know, at the subdivision improvement level, we're not, we're really not our purview to be considering things of whether that's owner occupied or rental occupied, or whether they're going to have porches or patios or no patios, or what the roof slopes might be. Those I don't, as I understand our action before us, it's 4 findings that are really, you know, what are the minimum lot sizes that meet the zoning? You know, it's 5 lots, well within the R17 allowances. So in my analysis, I don't think there's a basis to deny it.
I think you look at our page 7, our infill overlay districts, purpose, title of the article. We have to refer back to what we have laid on top of our standards. And it says right here, we have to protect the surrounding neighborhoods. It is the intent of these development standards to encourage a sensitive form of development and to allow the reasonable use of that complements it. So you're telling me that we should just blow that off? Because that's what's happening here, is that we are overriding something with an infill, which I am never in much disagreement with. But on this one, I do believe that you are upsetting the character of an area that is backed up to Sherman. They're facing into a residential area, and now you're inserting this higher density and a taller structure, more than likely, and you're changing the tempo of a very special portion of the garden district. And if we are going to ignore our own guidelines that we've written, then I think that we ought to look at what we're doing here. If we're not going to protect, if we're always just going to say yes to every developer that comes up to this step, then I think that we need to look at this. It says right here that we should protect the surrounding neighborhoods. All the neighbors have said they don't want this, and we're just saying, too bad. Are we going to keep doing that over and over here?
One more time. If I don't disagree with the need to be sensitive to those issues. I'm just saying, I don't know if I guess I have a question for staff to help me here, but in my mind, these subdivision findings are kind of narrowed to the more, like I say, does it meet it or not?
But I think we have to have a heart. We have to, we're Coeur d'Alene, we have to have a heart.
Do we have
We
a
have a
base?
heart?
Do we have?
No. We're ticking boxes. We need to find a heart.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
I would, just to kind of echo, I think, John's comments, that we have findings. I think there's some, Commissioner Fleming, I look at the next one of the downtown overlay, and this represents to me one of those exact examples of that transition between downtown core and residential areas that does allow and facilitate infill while protecting the surrounding neighborhoods. And then I look over to the map, which is really like a bowl of Fruit Loops, right? There's commercial, there's higher density surrounding it. It is that transition area that I think is covered in that downtown overlay zone. And I don't know, I understand the sentiment of the neighbors, but I don't know that, think we have to do something with the growth that we're experiencing, and I think the downtown overlay district, as it's written, transition between the downtown core and residential areas. Infill development is encouraged, including urban housing, such as townhouses, courtyard housing, cottages. With a height limit, we understand that that will be compatible. So our objective findings, I think, have been met here. And I understand what it probably feels like to be in that neighborhood and have that experience, that infill, but this to me is exactly that transition given the surrounding areas that are quite various or diverse in terms of their zones.
Peter, you have anything to add?
Oh, yeah, I'm debating whether it seems to me that this is, that we're looking at the Sherman 1, 2, 3, or whatever it is on the south east corner, those 5 houses there. They're all facing Sherman. How this changes is it's facing Lakeside. So it's sort of, it's a change of neighborhood, if you will. The houses next to it are, I don't want to say normal houses, but they have bigger lots. And I'm not sure if the people that are speaking against this are the neighbors to the east on the same side of the street, or whether the neighbors on the other side of the street. I understand it's not, and it shouldn't be permitted, and we don't permit it, and that is tell a person what to do with a house. Whether you're gonna rent it, you're gonna sell it, whatever you're gonna do. But we also are talking about the need for housing. And this is a point, will not affect my judgment on the issue, but I do want to bring it up. The housing is for residents. We want residential housing. But when we have overnight rentals, that sort of seems to me to defeat the permanent residency. This is not a place to decide that right now, but it gave me an opportunity to bring that up, because that is somewhat of an issue in my mind over the long term. I think I'm leaning, I believe I will not support this. You heard me think it out loud. The sole reason being that it is a change from the units that are facing Sherman. And I think that's a great difference. Now, you gotta divide a line someplace. You divide it in the alley, you divide it in the street. I think this will give us an opportunity to divide it on the alley. And for that reason, and the argument that Lynn provided, I can't support this.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Go right ahead, Lou, or is
I think this is a very inspired debate. I particularly and personally don't see a substantial distinction between frontage on Sherman and frontage on Lakeside. I understand the position people are making about that, but I don't see how you could really essentially deny this platting when it was just platted literally across the street. I mean, or literally, a stone's throw away. And typically that's one of the things we look at. Is this compatible with the neighborhood? It's in the neighborhood of Sherman 1 and 2. It's right nearby. And, I'm kind of with Commissioner Ingalls and Commissioner Mandel. I can't see a basis under which you would deny this if it meets all of the requirements within the law. It's really not up to the Planning Commission to really decide, although again, I think there's some very impassioned arguments for why one would or would not want this particular type of development in this particular spot. But that's really not I don't believe it is within the purview of the Planning Commission to decide that. I think we would have the same case. A lawyer could come with the developer and say, look, we've met all the, and I believe we've had this in front of the Planning Commission previously, and I believe it was at the part of the Atlas waterfront development, where the developer had counsel present. and was prepared to basically state, we're complying with the law here. And he was making that point very clear. So I don't know how you don't support this candidly. I'm with Commissioner Mandel and Commissioner Ingalls.
Thank you, Lou. I like the debate. I'm going to bring it to the commissioners to someone make a motion. Points are well made on both sides, and we'll see where this is really going to go. So if I have someone who wants to make a motion,
I will make a motion that, for subdivision dash 3-21, as a matter that's come before the Planning Commission tonight, March 9th, 2021, and there being present a person requesting approval of item S-3-21, a request for a 5-lot preliminary plat subdivision for Meesum Addition, replat of lots 1 through 3, Block 3, O'Brien's first addition to Coeur d'Alene. Applicant being Alan Meesum. Location plus or minus 0.38 acre site located at the southwest corner of 8th Street and Lakeside. Motion would include the findings B1 through B6 statements of fact in our worksheet that we adopt as part of the motion. B7 pursuant to section 16.10.030A.1 preliminary plats. In order to approve the preliminary plat, the Planning Commission would adopt the following findings. B7A, that all of the general plat statements have been met as determined by the city engineer, and that is based on the statement in page 3 of the staff report, which states that the city engineer has attested to the fact that all preliminary plat elements have been required by the municipal code have been met. That we adopt B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are adequate, and that is based on Sean's presentation, as well as the comments in the staff report, pages 4 and 5, that all of those conditions are satisfied. Motion would include B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does comply with all of the subdivision design standards contained in chapter 16.15 and all of the subdivision improvement standards contained in chapter 16.40, that those requirements are met. That's based on the presentation as well as the staff report attesting to the fact that the preliminary plat has been vetted against the subdivision ordinance, and all of those conditions have been met for compliance. Motion would include B7D, that the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district based on Sean's presentation and statement that the requirements of the applicable zoning district for the 5 lots have been met. And the 5 lots are within the zoning allowed by R17. Minimum lot size of roughly 3,300 feet per lot, well exceeds the 1,500 minimum. The street frontage of plus or minus 30 feet well exceeds the 15-foot minimum, and the overall density for the applicable zoning is met. Again, 5 units, 6.46 would be allowed by the zoning. So with that, as a conclusion and motion decision, that the Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned would find that the request for Alan Meesum for the preliminary plat as described in the application should be approved with 8 special conditions that are in our worksheet that the applicant has acknowledged and accepted, that being the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion. Need a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mandel. Roll call, Shannon, please.
Fleming,
No.
Ingalls,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutrip,
No.
Rumpler,
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes for 3-2 vote. I just want to make an announcement on the appeal process within the city. Any person may request appeal of the Planning Commission's decision by filing an appeal application with the Planning Director within 15 days of tonight's meeting. So if anyone wants to make an appeal, they can do so through the Planning Department as well.
Quick clarification, that's 15 calendar days, not working days.
15 calendar days.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Well, if you're gonna do it, make sure you do it sooner the better. Don't wait till 14 days.
all right, moving ahead. We have, let me get it here for us. We have, thank you, SP-1-21, a proposed R34 density increase special use permit in the city, in C-17 zoning district. And Tammy, thank you for being so patient.
No problem. Let's set up here. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. So this evening, we have a request for a special use permit to allow a density increase to R34 for a proposed multifamily apartment complex in the C-17 zoning district. So the applicant this evening is Government Way Coeur d'Alene Hotel LLC, and the architect is Jacob Rivard. And again, it's a special use permit to allow a density increase for the allowance of a multifamily development with 232 residential units. So the property is located adjacent to Highway 95 on the west, I-90 to the north, and Government Way, which is an arterial road to the east. And a legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on February 17th, 2021. And this is a location map giving you an idea of where this property is. And this is Highway 95 and I-90, and the property is outlined here in the red, and this line indicates Government Way. And this is a aerial photo with the property a little closer. You can see it's a large parcel made up of 2 lots. And I-90 is located here, 95 here, and Government Way. The subject property is currently vacant. It was the former site of the Wild Waters Water Park, built in 2001, and closed its doors in 2010. In 2018, a demolition permit was taken out to clean up the site and remove all the existing structures. The property owner has submitted a site plan that shows 2 proposed multifamily buildings, a clubhouse, which includes a rental office and indoor amenities, and a proposed parking lot on the site. And this is the site plan that the applicant has submitted. And there are 2 buildings that make up the 232-unit multifamily project, with parking, as you can see, around the exterior portion. There's a maintenance building back here. They've proposed a dog park located here, and there is an access point to get to the bike trail along 95 located here. And again, I mentioned that Government Way is an arterial, and this is a continuation of the site plan. This is the private drive out to Government Way, and Government Way is located here. So this is the proposed building elevation, and they have reworked the entrance to provide a better access. I'll go back one slide, and landscaped both sides here of the private drive. So this is a bird's eye view looking at the main entrance from the southeast looking northwest. And I've included a number of the building elevations in the staff report, but just a couple here. This is Building A north elevation. And on this example of the elevation, it's about 48 feet 8 inches. The R34 special use permit would allow for an overall height of 63 feet. The existing zoning for multifamily in the commercial zoning district would allow for 45 feet. And this is a west elevation, and this is about 50 feet tall. So there are 3 required findings for this request today. Finding B8A, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And the subject property is noted here in this white area, and it is designated as Appleway North 4th Street. And the green indicates that this area here is the transitional area, and this is the boundary of the North 4th Street Appleway area. And your staff report also includes the information on Appleway North 4th Street tomorrow, and the bullet points outline what they are. I've included comprehensive plan objectives here. Objective 1.12, community design. Objective 1.14, efficiency. And objective 3.01, manage growth. And I've also included additional comp plan goals and policies in your staff report on page 11. Finding B8B, the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. So this is a site photo of the subject property, and this is a view from the east side of the property looking west toward Highway 95. This is a view from the east side of the property again, but looking northwest. This is a view looking northeast from the private driveway of the subject property, looking at the neighborhood businesses just to the northeast. And this is looking northeast from the driveway of the subject property at the neighboring businesses again. And this is looking north along Government Way from the subject property's access point. And this is a view from the subject property along Government Way, looking toward Homestead or east. So this is the existing zoning map. The subject property is outlined here in the white area. It's red indicating commercial zoning, along with the portion to the south and the east. And then west along Highway 95 is C17L. And then if you look back to the east along Government Way, this is C17L. This is neighborhood commercial, and then C17L again, limited commercial. So there have been a couple special use permit approvals here in this area, and I'll read a few of them within the vicinity. So SP 588 was approved as religious assembly, located here. SP 1292 was a R34 density increase, and that is here. Food sales on site was SP 1000. SP 801 was for a community education. And the last one within the vicinity was an R34 density increase for SP 111, which is located here. So as far as land use on the property, the red indicates commercial uses, and as you can see, these areas are all with commercial uses, and these are civic uses. So the property directly to the south of the subject site has a hotel located on it, which is La Quinta Inn, and a restaurant use. To the west of US 95 consists of many healthcare professional offices, including Kootenai Health. And to the south, located here, is a shopping area including a grocery market, service uses, and numerous restaurant opportunities. And then we've got I-90 to the north. So finding B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities and services, and city staff from engineering, streets, water, fire, parks, and wastewater departments have reviewed this application request in regards to public utilities and public facilities, and have indicated that there are adequate public facilities and public utilities available to serve the proposed request. I did want to give you an update for one of the comments in your staff report related to this item, which is on page 18 of your staff report. The updated comment from our city engineer was with regard to traffic. So Government Way has the capacity needed to accommodate the proposed development. However, the use of Homestead Avenue must be discouraged for residents of the proposed project by allowing only left and right turns out of the development, no through movements across Government Way. Streets and Engineering have no objections to the proposed special use permit, but requests that signage and pavement markings be installed to prohibit the use of Homestead Avenue. So that condition was also added to the staff report comments and conditions. So there are 7 recommended conditions, one for wastewater, which is our typical utility requirement, as well as water. And then the fire department included 4 conditions. Streets and engineering provided a condition, the one I just read. And then the planning department added a condition. This is related to Design Review Commission reviewing this project due to the project size and underlying C-17 zoning. So action alternatives, the planning commission will need to consider this request and make the appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. So just the underlying zoning real quick would allow for 119 units in the C-17 zoning district, and this request for R-34 would allow for the 232 dwelling or multifamily units. Any questions for staff?
I have a quick question. Do we have any level of service on Apple Way and Government Way? Do we have any sense of level of service on that corner? That's a bugger of a corner right now.
I
not
think
great.
Chairman,
Chris,
we might want to have Chris Bosley respond to
Okay.
that. He's online, and we have all the departments
And then
available.
also, what's happening on the freeway overpass at Highway 95 and the overpass, which has no pedestrian walkways, but they have pedestrians on it. So is there any plan for future improvement to that case, because there's people on that narrow walkway?
I think we've got staff that could answer that as well. Any questions for me?
No questions for you,
Okay,
Tammy.
thank you.
I'm going to open, oh, I'm sorry,
I
Peter.
Just reiterate this, R-34 is for a specific purpose. And that purpose is, you have it here in the thing, but if you had said it, I must have been daydreaming.
That's okay, that's for an increased density.
But it's for a specific purpose. What it reads down here, you have to be close to an arterial. There's a series of steps, points you have to make. Close to transportation, close to work, schools, et cetera. I mean, this is designed for a very specific purpose. And I think at least that purpose.
That is
Secondly,
correct.
But so everybody's aware that, we've had some people talking about we should have R-34 zones, except like that, and we don't. We have, it's an item-by-item basis for very specific reasons. Secondly, you say here that the height will be 63 feet in accordance with proposed zoning that's before the council. Can we pass something on this, on a proposal by the council, or does the council have to act on it?
No, this could be approved by the planning commission.
Okay.
And the maximum height allowed is 63 feet with the density increase special use permit.
Very good, thank you.
And I will provide page 7 and page 8 of your staff report does speak to the criteria that has to be met, which one being close proximity to an arterial as defined in the Coeur d'Alene Transportation Plan, and then the other being close proximity to shopping, schools, and park area. And also on page 12 of your staff report, I mentioned what services were nearby. And in addition, both Bora and Winton Elementary are less than 2 miles from the subject property.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, did you want to have Chris answer Commissioner Fleming's question before the applicant?
Yeah, I would have
Okay.
who's ever on Zoom from staff, they can, one after another, if they have any comments.
That'd be great.
Go ahead, Chris, you can start it. Hello, Chris.
I think we're having a mute issue.
Okay.
Come back to it
There we are.
later.
Go ahead, Chris, you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Go right ahead.
So one of your questions was about the level of service of Government Way. I don't know exactly what that level of service is, but this is actually one of the lower traveled sections of Government Way. The sections north up by Hanley see a lot more traffic than this section does. So I'm not concerned about the capacity of Government Way not being able to accommodate all of this. And what was the second?
It was actually that light at the corner of Apple Way and Government Way, which gets backed up a lot because everyone's heading Apple Way to the freeway. And so I see a long delay going north quite frequently from Government Way to cross over Apple Way, because the traffic tends to be lighted toward 90. So I was just wondering if there's any sense of what would happen to that when we load that many more cars on that direction.
Well, there would certainly be some increase in delay there, but most of the traffic that we have in that area is on Apple Way. Apple Way is a very busy street in Coeur d'Alene, and those intersections along Apple Way near US 95 are very, very congested. We've done some signal work there, but there's some more improvements that can be made there for sure. I can't say whether or not this would actually have adverse effects on that intersection, but any growth we have does certainly have a reduction in how much, how many cars can get through an intersection on a given light cycle. Another question you had was about the sidewalks on Government Way going over I-90. And we don't have any plans for us replacing anything on that bridge. When ITD does future work along I-90, that would be an opportunity for that. But we don't have any plans in the near future for adding any accommodations on that bridge.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Chris, John here. Question on traffic again. We received some comments in advance of the meeting tonight from some folks that live on Homestead. Is it Homestead? Homestead.
Yes.
And so, they're maybe a little leery that folks are going to come out of this flag lot, out that long drive to Government Way. I guess the mitigation would be signage that says left or right turn only, no through intersection movement. Question for you, do you think those signs would be effective? And related to that, in your notion of this being a residences for folks, apartments, would it be a normal path that you think that they would want to go down Homestead? Would that be kind of the normal flow of things for folks? It's kind of my sense that if I picture myself driving out that drive to Government Way, I probably wouldn't want to shoot all the way across, and even if I did, it would only take me a roundabout way to get somewhere meaningful, if you will. So I'd like your opinion on that, and also if you would, in fairness, I guess, to the applicant, a hotel was approved for that site, I believe, as we sit here, and by right, a number of allowable uses, everything from a call center to a community assembly church to an office building to a big box retail, car lot, RV sales, you name it, by right could establish themselves there. Would the traffic from those sorts of by right developments be worse or better than apartment building?
Well,
a lot in the question, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I certainly think that the previously approved use of the hotel would have fewer impacts, basically because you're not always going to be looking at full capacity of a hotel, and the travel times for people staying there probably don't coincide as much as with peak traffic times on Government Way. as, say, the residential use that's being planned or proposed right now. With the residential use proposed now, people who live there for a while tend to learn their way around, and they could find that sneak route of Homestead if their goal was to get on 3rd Street to go downtown or someplace on 3rd Street. Personally, I think it would be a tough movement to make, especially during peak hour, to shoot across 5 lanes of traffic to make that straight movement. So I don't think many people are going to try to do that. Signs are just signs, and they're not cops, so they're not going to stop anybody. So people who realize that could just ignore them and shoot straight across. But I honestly don't think that that's going to be a very high number of people who do that, especially, like I said, because of the traffic on Government Way. If you're trying to get over to 3rd, it would be much easier to take a right, merge over 2 lanes into the center turn lane, and then turn left at another street further south than that. So I don't think Homestead is going to be a problem, but I have spoken with one of the property owners there and read all their comments, and I agree that, they do have valid concerns, but I don't think it's going to be realized. But we'd like to make the effort to put in the signage and the pavement markings to change this behavior before it starts, kind of.
Thank you.
So Chris, I got a question. This is Tom. Are we going to put signage saying left and right turns only at the entrance?
Island.
Yeah, what I talked about with the engineer designing this project was to put pavement markings for arrows showing left and right, and then put signs up that say left and right turn only. I didn't want to put anything across the street onto Homestead unless we really have to, and I certainly didn't want to put any median barriers or anything like that into Government Way, because then they start to interfere with our street sweeping and our snow plowing, and they cause crashes themselves. We've got the one up on Government Way, on Prairie by the Nexus School that has seen a lot of damage from cars hitting it already.
Sure, yeah, I agree. I think there'd be a little bit of a challenge to make your left turn going north coming out of that, because there is traffic in both directions, and perhaps people hanging out in that suicide lane once they make that left turn to be able to get over to the 2 lanes. So I think that'll be a challenge, but that's just something that the developer's got to have to handle, I guess. We have no reason to put right turn only sign up there and making it so that we can't go left.
I'm sorry, what was your question there?
Whether or not there be any type of recommendation from you to saying, making a right turn only and not.
As you're exiting?
Yeah, considering a left turn is gonna be maybe a hanging out in that suicide lane until you can get over to the 2 other lanes.
Right. The burden of that, I guess, is going to be on the residents who live there and not so much on the traveling public. It could be frustrating if they have to sit there for a while, but I didn't want to make that kind of, condition on this to require that. And then, of course, we'd just be looking at some sort of signage for that also, which people might ignore, and then we'd end up having to put in some sort of concrete median system, which I really don't want to go that direction.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Any other questions for Chris?
I do notice that they have parking right up to that right turn lane up on their site plan. Might be the worst spot in the house to park. They're right up to the actual driveway. as it enters and leaves. So backing out where cars are going to be backed up, waiting to
Commissioner
turn.
Fleming, we're
Yes.
having a little trouble picking you up.
Okay.
Speak a little louder, thank you.
Oh, wow, okay. I do notice that they've got parking spaces right up to that driveway exit, and that may not be the best place to find parking, or it'll be the last place anyone wants, that's for sure. So awkward, tough spot, so just my comment.
Chairman Messina.
Go, oh, sorry.
One more question, Chris, and it's maybe for down the line, but for as far as safe routes to school, this development would likely have a lot of school children who would be zoned for Winton or Bora. And to Commissioner Fleming's point, crossing Government Way and then crossing 90, has there been any thought to, I mean, how do we address safe routes to school in that concentrated area? And at what point in time does that come into the picture?
Well, that's something we would need to look at, I guess. Our safe routes to school kind of mapping that we started to do a while back didn't get very far, and then the schools went through a rezoning recently. So it's something we need to take a closer look at again to figure out what those safe routes are. But I'll certainly take a look at that to see what opportunities we have.
Bora's not it.
Any other questions for Chris?
Nope.
Hillary, is there anybody else from staff that's on Zoom that?
We do have others. I don't know if there's any specific questions, but yeah, we have Bobby here in person
Yeah.
from Fire, and we have Craig Etherton from Fire. We have Terry Pickle from Water, Larry Parsons from Wastewater, and Chris, and I'll see who else is on. I think we covered all of them. So yeah, if you have any questions.
Yeah,
other
let
than
them
streets and
chime in.
engineering.
No. Okay. At this time, I guess we'll bring the applicant up. Good evening. I'll swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just state your name and the
Rick
city you live in.
Stilovich. Rick Stilovich.
And the city?
I'm from Frisco, Texas.
Okay.
I wished I were from here.
Oh.
but
Well, welcome
This is
back for a while.
This is a beautiful city, and we love Coeur d'Alene, and you know, look forward to participating with you and in managing your growth in the future, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to bring this project before you, and I appreciate your time to consider this issue tonight. I think the first thing I want to say is just kind of introduce you to who we are. We're Braintree Properties. We're an Idaho company located in Boise. We love Idaho, and certainly a lot of our folks spend a lot of time here in Coeur d'Alene. We are an owner developer. We develop only for ourselves. So we're not somebody that just develops something and then flees the project and heads someplace else and does another project. We develop these projects for ourselves. We develop and manage hotels, and we develop and manage multifamily projects. And I think we were here a year and a half or so ago with the proposal to put a hotel there. And unfortunately, we were hit by this pandemic, and that turned the hotel industry on its side. And so lenders who generally participate in hotel type of programs just really cut off their funding, and so hotel projects became very difficult to do. So we purchased this piece of property specifically for the hotel, and so we own it. We've owned it for quite some time now, and we've done some evaluation, wanted to decide what could we do there that would make sense for us, the property owner, and how it could contribute to the city, and what we could do for the city. And Coeur d'Alene, fortunately, or unfortunately for you, depending on your perspective, growth is sometimes a problem to manage, but growth is a good thing, and Coeur d'Alene's a beneficiary of a good place to live, a good lifestyle and growth. And so we thought, gosh, multifamily might be, the right kind of product. And as we did our market surveys, we found within, I think, a 3 or 4 mile radius, there were probably about 3,000 units. And of all those units, the majority of them, I think, except for 300, are 15 to 20 years old. And they're a little bit further out. And so we thought, gosh, this would be a great amenity for the medical center across 95, and for the, commercial districts in the area. Employers are always looking for great opportunities for their employees to live. And so we wanted to propose to you a nice first-class multifamily residential project that is not only just a place for a family to live, but it's a lifestyle. We'd like to tie into your parks and your trails, and we'll have a pool and activity center, and you saw the dog park. And so we want to make this a lifestyle place for the potential residents. And we have done a lot of projects, and we've worked with a lot of neighborhoods. And we want to contribute to the neighborhood. We want to be very sensitive to their needs, and in talking to Chris, we understand the concern about Homestead and people cutting through there. And like he said, we drove through there tonight trying to make that straight across Government Way, and I think it was like 2:30 or 3 o'clock. And it's difficult. Government Way is, busy, and going straight across that street is problematic. And so we're happy to work with the neighborhood to find a reasonable way to help them solve their concerns over traffic. We're going to paint arrows on the pavement as well as put up signs. We hope that'll help. But if we have problems even beyond that, we're happy to work with the city and the neighborhood in trying to deter traffic through that neighborhood. So we are sensitive to that, and we want to be somebody that is a good neighbor. We want our residents to feel like they're in a good neighborhood, and neighbors to enjoy having them there. So that's what we're proposing tonight, is maybe help you solve some of your growth problems and get to a point where you can house those 80,000 people that you're planning on coming here. And that's our proposal tonight for you to consider this multifamily project. Any questions I can answer?
Do you have any comments on some of the comments that some of the commissioners have made as far as, I believe, some of the parking spaces, Lynn, that was closer to the street, or one is, I can't tell from our packet here, the actual height to the highest point of the building, if you can address that for me.
We've got our architect here too, so I'll have him address a couple of
Okay.
those things too, if we can. But let me suggest that the parking requirement is, you have a high parking requirement here. And so we're trying to fit in enough parking spaces to meet your requirement, and at the same time, we want to provide the residents covered parking, a combination of carport covering as well as garage covering. So when you start putting in garages, that squeezes some of your parking spaces out. So we thought that if there really was a need for the number of spaces the code requires, we could at least have that excess parking along the exit driveway.
Okay.
We don't think they'll be needed, we don't think they'll be used, but they're there just in case they are.
Okay.
Mike?
Afternoon, Commissioners. My name is
I
Jacob
have-
Rivard.
Are you Rich or Matt?
I am Jacob Rivard, the architect.
And I'm Rick.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Rich. Let me just swear you in, Jacob. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, self you got?
I do.
Okay, go right ahead, Jacob.
So the question in regards to the height of the buildings, as Tammy suggested earlier, that we are limited to 63 feet total. We are not going above that at the moment, and we don't intend to ever. When the facade, if you look at these elevations, On the lower building, the
Okay.
higher building of 5, the top of the roof line is going to be at 42 feet. We do go above that with these slopes, but that's just about 8 feet more. The only portions where we might get close to that are actually, let me go back to this bird's eye view, are these stairwells. In order to provide better service for people who are maintaining the building, we're not going to provide a roof hatch, we're going to provide a stairway all the way up. But that still will be under the 63
Okay.
feet. The other question was in regards to the parking. So this site, if you recall, has this dog leg. Our entire site parking and building is going to be within this main portion at this moment. We don't intend to put any parking along this leg right here that comes out to Government Way. That Government Way portion, as you can see in this drawing right here, it's 400 feet long. So and we have no intent of putting any parking along there. So we don't anticipate, there's quite a bit of space for the cars to be able to queue out or queue into the property.
Okay, good. Questions? No?
There's required parking of 409 spots?
Correct,
And
that's
you're providing 426?
426, correct. That's just a little extra. We are happy to go down. We just at the moment.
More of an impervious surface. Why?
Right, exactly.
Why?
So that's what we had in the total. We had 426. Part of it was providing more compact spaces. We will provide as little or as the minimal required, so we can provide more areas for the water to seep into the ground. We're going to be working with the civil engineer and working with the rest of the department and planning to make sure that we can adhere to that. We are also working with the planning department to provide additional indoor bike parking facilities. As Rick stated earlier, we want to be able to, have this facility be part of the lifestyle of Coeur d'Alene. And part of the lifestyle is lots of bike trails, lots of biking in general. So we'll be having indoor parking. At the moment, we're planning 20 parking spaces for each unit for a total of 40 indoor secure parking stations, and each will have their own little bike stations to work on their bikes.
Add power. We're moving to power. We
Right.
need ELDs.
Yep, definitely.
I mean, we're
Well,
seeing more and more
a
on
lot
the
more
street here.
e-bikes, yep,
Yeah, we need
exactly.
plug-in car spaces, so.
We'll be
I
happy
encourage
to
you.
provide that for
It's
sure.
not Texas. I used to live in South Lake, I know. Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't see us needing extra spot parking, especially if these are hospital workers. They are hopefully going to find their way to walk there.
Right.
That's the beauty of this location. So,
Okay. Okay, no other questions right now? I think the only other person I have is Matt Coeur, and doesn't wish to testify, but is in favor. Okay, thank you.
Someone over here.
There's,
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure where
Uh,
to insert a question from the public.
did-
Is it okay?
no, I can't hear you unless you get up to the podium, and,
I wasn't sure if I
did you
can.
sign up on the sheet?
I did not.
Okay, you can sign up later, just state your name and.
My name
do
is
you
Lori
swear-
Borazon.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you
Yes,
God.
I do.
Okay, go right ahead.
I couldn't get the information off the presentation, what the average, size of an apartment, like, is that something that's already established?
Can you face the mic so we can, yeah, I'm sorry,
Mike is here, okay.
yeah.
So I was asking about the average size of the units, and we don't have that
it's
information.
not part of our
Okay.
purview.
Then my other question was, if you're talking about connecting into the bike trails and the amenities that make part of Coeur d'Alene, how does everybody walk in and out that same entrance onto Government Way that we're seeing as problematic, or riding their bikes, across that bridge on 95 that doesn't have any sidewalks? Is that the only way that you get in and out of there?
The applicant will be able to come back again and address any of the questions
Okay.
that you have right now. Do you have it?
No,
That's-
thank you very much.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 signed up online.
okay,
Okay.
bring them
So
on.
first one is Corey Carnes.
Corey, are you there?
I think we need to unmute Corey.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Corey, let me just swear you in. Do you tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
I do.
And just state your name and the city you live in, please.
My name is Corey Carnes. I live in Coeur d'Alene.
Great, go ahead,
I
Corey.
guess I have more of a question concerning the traffic on Ironwood Drive, because if you go from Government Way to Ironwood Drive and you're trying to get to the hospital or I-90 or to 95, it's already pretty congested. Has anybody done a review of that traffic study and possible access to health services?
That'll be a question that Chris can answer for us. Do you have any other questions, Corey?
I don't, thank you.
Okay. Chris, do you want to address that question?
Sure. Yeah. Currently, we actually have a traffic study going on in that area, and we're looking. Dowell Consulting is doing that as part of the health corridor for urban renewal. And with that, they are looking at some traffic mitigation measures and how we can free up some traffic in that area, because we can all agree that Ironwood is very congested, especially between US 95 and Northwest Boulevard. So right now they're looking at ways that can be mitigated and what kind of funding would be needed to do that.
Can I answer your question, Corey?
I think we remuted her.
Okay.
We can unmute her to double check.
Okay, here I am.
Oh, do you hear that, Corey?
Yes, I did, but I'm just wondering about if they've considered the impact of this apartment complex on that, because like you said, people will find their way around, and if they're not going to go to Appleway, they're going to go through Ironwood Drive, or visit Albertsons, or various places around there. And I think that would be a significant impact on the already congested area there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may weigh in a little bit, and then Chris can probably clarify because he's the expert, but in terms of the health corridor area, we did a master plan, and you recall kind of going through that process. This area, there was intensification of uses that were drawn into that, and that was part of what's being evaluated by Dell Engineering for the transportation master plan for the health corridor. So they wouldn't just look at the site as vacant, they'd look at it as the zoning plus improvements on the site. And I don't know, we were looking at some mix of uses, some residential, there was a variety of uses in this location. So my understanding is that that traffic study would have looked at something similar to this, and Chris might want to speak to that more specifically.
Yeah, what Hillary said is true. They do look at the vacant land that's around and what the zoning allows. So on this particular site, they probably only looked at traffic from a R17 or C17 and not R34. But in reality, if we're looking at, I think I figured around 100 peak hour trips, they would have been looking at maybe 50 peak hour trips for that time. But in reality, roads can carry, close to 1,000 cars per hour per lane, somewhere in that vicinity. So it's pretty minor. If we looked at accumulation of many of these, we certainly would have a congestion issue. But this one in itself, we don't know where they're going to drive to either. I mean, it's probably a good guess that they might go down to Albertsons and places like that. So I'm not going to lie, this is going to add more congestion to the streets, but we're getting more congestion everywhere, and it's something that we're just managing as we go along.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Chris. Who else do we have?
The next one is Brian Meyer.
Brian, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good.
My name,
Brian, let me just swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just state your name and the city you live in, please.
My name's Brian Meyer. I live in Coeur d'Alene.
Okay, Brian, go right ahead.
I just had a comment regarding the traffic. It seems like people are concerned about the traffic issue. Even the developer had a hard time turning left. Just a recommendation. I don't know if it would be possible. I'm not a street planner, but if you went out west and potentially had a right turn only going north, and that was just a comment or recommendation.
95,
Okay, thank you, Brian.
95.
All right.
Okay, that's all that we have signed up. I don't know if you want to have Chris respond to that last question or not, to
Sure.
clarify that.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sure. I think in this case it would be kind of like a slip lane onto 95, if I understand Brian correctly. And ITD does not allow that. And their reasoning is because it is so close to Interstate 90 that FHWA actually controls the access around there. So there have been several businesses who have asked for access onto 95 and have been denied in the past. So I don't think there's any possible way that that could be accommodated. So really, I think the best way to get to 95 North, in my view, would be to hang a right on Government Way and hang a right on Ironwood to get to 95. It would be going slightly out of your way, but it would be a much better movement than turning left onto Government Way and then going up to Apple Way to access it.
While I have you, Brian, what about, crazy, but we've got the La Quinta, and then there's a north-south on the, I'm looking at a Google map, the La Quinta, and then you've got the, what was it called, the shopping center that was there?
Shopco.
Shopco, and of course it's empty right now. But right now we have a green line, so there must be a property line change there. Would there be any consideration to create a true access point there that currently exists from in front of Shopco? To again, take the pressure point off of just one access point in this development.
Who was that question directed to?
You.
Okay. I think you said Brian, so you threw me off
I'm sorry,
there.
Chris, I'm sorry. My brain is.
So you're talking about an access onto 95?
No, onto Ironwood, because if you look directly
Oh.
south between La Quinta and the Shopco, we've got a green, what looks like a roadway between those as designated, between two properties. And I don't know where it starts and stops, but that whole parking lot is not just, it's got, on this drawing, it's got a roadway there. So is there any way that could be considered?
It could, but those are other property owners, so it'd have to be some sort of easement agreement between the property owners. It would certainly help for emergency access to allow another point. But also, if those other properties were just left as parking lots, it wouldn't be the safest situation for people to be coming in and out of, because a lot of accidents do happen in parking lots with people backing out and people walking and things like that.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Anybody else?
That's all we have.
Okay. Does anyone from the development team want to make any comments before I close public testimony at this point on the stuff that we heard? Want to come up? If not? Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Coeur with Braintree from Boise once again. I just think there was just one question that was asked that was not answered, and that was how are they going to connect to the trail? Were they going to come through Government Way and come around? So initially when we were planning this out, we were not anticipating a connector to the trail. However, when we did our initial meetings with the city, they informed us that they would like to have a connector along Highway 95 because in the future trail planning system, a trail will be going along there. So we'll be working with this planning department in Parks and Rec to be able to exactly tie into that when they're ready at the time, and we will obviously prep for it right now when we start building it.
All right, thank you for that.
Mr. Rivard, can I
Yes.
just ask you one more thing?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I'm dominating tonight, but this is, B8B, we've got an element in our points that said, is the design and appearance of the project compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of architectural style? Well, there is no style around.
Correct.
I mean, the hospital has its unique style. But I've been doing this as well for, I don't want to name it how many years. I used to be head of design at Marriott, so I'm used to looking at massing. I find the honeycomb busyness of this elevation, I'd like to let you look at more of the massing and how you treat it, so it's not so chopped up.
Yep.
And that there's blocking and there's massing that makes a statement without being so honeycombed.
Right.
Because that's my reaction to this, and I know it's a simple rendering, but it's overwhelming because we don't have this in our city. We don't own anything like this, and I really want to see you make it look more individual and more play with it.
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
And please open yourself up,
w-
you know,
w-
get
I mean,
creative.
Right, we're definitely at a programming phase, you know,
Yeah.
this was kind of,
Indicative, I know.
this was fast, you know, the planning asked us
I
to
know.
see could get us some kind of idea of what it'll look like. So just to kind of back up a little bit, if you look at the massing overall, coming back to that, you know, you'll notice that we did an idea of a step up. So this portion right here, just south, is a 3-level, then we go up to a 4-level, then it comes up to a 5-level. One of the reasons why we did that is because we wanted to provide as much sunlight into the courtyard as well.
luck.
Yeah, so.
West sun, that west sun, your pool's gonna be in shade. It's gonna be in shade.
Okay,
It
well, we
just
did,
will.
we went through and did some quick solar shade studies, so we are adjusting as best as possible. We know we are limited to our site and how many units we want to get on there, but I do agree with you on the massing of it as we go through design development through it, and then we work through the
Raise the bar a
design
little.
commission as well. We're definitely going to push it forward and make sure that it meets the design standards of Coeur d'Alene and of
Heat
course
the
Braintree
pool.
properties.
You're gonna need to heat
Yeah,
that pool.
and there's going to be a very nice spa in there too. so.
Never be warm otherwise. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions?
You'll probably have to swear me in. I'm Matt.
Okay, Matt, I just need to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Finally got the whole team up here tonight.
Hey, that's perfect. Members of the commission, thanks for having us here. It's been a long night for you, so I'll be quick. Commissioner Fleming, I appreciate your comment. I live in Fort Worth, so I'm very familiar with South Lake,
South
so you
Lake.
probably did a lot.
I was there when there were
in Solana.
cows in a Walmart and that was it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Listen, we're not here to throw anything down anybody's throat. That's not who we are. As far as massing is concerned and site renderings, obviously we want to make sure that it's inviting to the community, right? I mean, it is on I-90 and 95. It is one of the first things you see as you come in. As Jacob mentioned, right, this was just a quick schematic rendering, but when it comes to trails or schematics or massing or whatever, hey, we are all about making sure that this is a first-class development.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, at this time, I'm going to close public testimony and bring it to the commissioners for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Go right ahead.
I think somebody should congratulate somebody, this health corridor. This seems to be one of the first things that popped out on the health corridor. It seems to me this is directed exactly what the health corridor is working on through Ignite the CDA and urban renewal. You know, it might be happenstance, but that doesn't mean somebody can't take credit for it.
Okay.
I think this is very well done.
Go ahead.
Really quick too, just make sure the separate set of findings is the one that has those R34 criteria, so.
The ones that you gave us. this evening.
Correct, yes. So
Right.
just want to make sure that you're referring to that. On page 3, there's the highlighted text. Thank you.
I'm just waiting.
No, this is good. We need the housing, we need the development, and that land is tough, so I think it's a good solution. You know, I think we need it, and I think we'll get over the hurdles. So, should I make a motion?
Go right ahead.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on March 9th, 2021, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP-1-21, a density increase to R34 special use permit for proposed multifamily apartment complex in the C-17 in the zoning district. The applicant is Government Way Coeur d'Alene Hotel LLC. Location is at 6.84 acre parcel located at 2119 North Government Way. We've met all the findings B1 through B7, public forum. B8, that pursuant to section 17.09.220 special use permit criteria, a special use permit may be approved only if the proposal conforms to all the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. The proposal is in conformance with the comp plan as follows. Natural environment, you're working with what you have, flat site. Goal 2, economic environment. This is absolutely in support of the medical corridor and the hospital specifically, but also just the whole live proximity to a lot of businesses, Apple Way and all the 95 corridor. Goal 3 is the home environment. We manage the growth. We have the land. It's there, it's available, and it's underutilized. And we are delighted to see something of this magnitude coming in. Goal 4, administrative environment. We have the city services. We certainly have had the public participation. And B6, 8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. This is based on the basically underused, and you're fighting a freeway, so anyone who wants to step up to that hit is good. Triple glazing would be good, but beside that, does the density or intensity of the project fit the surrounding area? Yes, it will serve that area admirably. Is the proposed development compatible with the existing land use and pattern? Certainly, you can walk to grocery stores, barbers, haircut, you name it, we've got it in that proximitous area, so it feeds the locale and their businesses. Is the design and appearance, and we've talked through that. I think they'll address many of those concerns as they go forward. For an R34, also make the finding that the proposal is in close proximity to shopping, schools, and park areas. We do need a school plan. There will be people who find their way through Homestead and weasel their way through the back roads, I guarantee you. Mothers in minivans. 8C, B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. And this is based on the city's findings and this document. For R34, also make the finding that the proposal is in close proximity to multiple arterials, as defined in the Coeur d'Alene Transportation Plan, sufficient to handle the amount of traffic generated by the request, in addition to that of the surrounding neighborhood. And the project and accessing the street must be designed in such a way as to minimize vehicular traffic through adjacent residential neighborhoods. I can actually see a minibus coming from the hospital and picking up and dropping people off. That's how good this service is to this area. In order, conclusion, and decision, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that Government Way Coeur d'Alene Hotel LLC for special use permit as described in the application should be approved with the following special conditions covering the wastewater, water, fire, you have to meet all the standards, may find a Knox box and get it out through my suggested exit route. Streets and engineering, signage will be addressing some of those homestead challenges. And on that, I would say, let's get this thing moving. All right, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify the last condition, the planning one for the design
Planning,
review.
design review, commission review will be required due to the project size and underlying C-17 zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I overlooked that.
Have a first, we need a second.
Second?
I have a second by Commissioner Mandel. Roll call, please, Shannon.
Fleming,
Yes.
Ingalls,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutrip,
Yes.
Rumpler.
Yes.
Motion passes, and again, let me just read the appeal process. Any person may request an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision by filing an appeal application with the Planning Director within 15 days, and that is 15 calendar days. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, and good luck. Okay, moving ahead, once again, we have, the applicant is Eugene and Nancy Haig, Living Trust, a proposed 3.194 acre annexation from county agricultural suburban to a CR3, and this is A-2-21. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. The applicant for tonight's public hearing is Eugene and Nancy Haig Living Trust, and they're represented by Dobler Engineering. There are 3 requests before you tonight, and each one will have separate findings. The first request is A-1-21, the annexation of 3.19 acres in conjunction with zoning approval from County Agricultural Suburban to R3 zoning district in the Hillside Overlay. Second item is PUD-1-21, a residential plan unit development that will allow for 4 new house sites to be developed in the Hillside Overlay with the following modifications. A, lots fronting on a public street requirement, and B, minimum lot frontage requirements. And the last item is a subdivision item, S-1-21, a 5-lot, 2-track preliminary plat to be known as Hague subdivision. So the location of this property is at 2248 East Stanley Hill Road. Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on February 21, 2021. And all of the required notifications have been made. So the first item is the annexation item. So this property is located here, highlighted in red, and you can see the green illustrates the current city limits, and this part of the property is adjacent to the city. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the property, and you can see this green line. This is the part that's adjacent to the city. There's a single-family residence on the property. The property is surrounded by single-family residence, and it is sloping to the south. Here's a bird's-eye view of the property looking north. And here's a bird's-eye view looking east. This is Lily Road to the east and Lily Road to the west that stubs into the property. Here's the area of city impact, and you can see the property is well within the ACI. Part of the application, the applicant submitted an annexation map giving a legal description of the property. Here's the existing zoning showing the county zoning of Ag Suburban, County Ag Suburban, and the city R3 zoning to the west. The proposed zoning will be R3, and it will be located in the Hillside Overlay. There are 4 findings that must be met in order for an annexation to be approved. Findings B8 through B11. The first one is B8, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan indicates that this is in the Cherry Hill area, and it's located in the stable established. And these areas are where the character of the neighborhoods are largely been established and in general should be maintained. The street network, the number of building lots, and general land uses are not expected to change greatly within the planning period. Cherry Hill is also envisioned as 1 unit per acre and up to a maximum of 3 units per acre. Here's a list of the comprehensive plan objectives as it relates to this annexation request. The full list is on page 14 and 15 of your staff report. Objective 1.10, hillside protection, protect the natural and topographical character, identity, and aesthetic quality of the hillsides. Objective 1.12, community design, support the enhancement of existing urbanized areas and discourage sprawl. And finally, neighborhoods, protect and preserve existing neighborhoods from incompatible land uses and developments. The next finding is finding B9, that public facilities and utilities are and are not available or are not available for and adequate for the proposed use. This application has been routed through the city departments. City staff from streets and engineering, water, fire, parks, and wastewater departments have reviewed the application request in regards to public utilities and public facilities. And each department has indicated there are public facilities and public utilities available and adequate for the proposed annexation request. There's also a list of 16 recommended conditions as part of this annexation and PUD and subdivision requests that are at the end of the staff report. The next finding is finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. The site slopes to the south, and there is an approximately 120-foot drop in elevation on the subject property. The site is currently densely treed, and the subject property would be annexed to the city under the hillside regulations. Here's a topographical map indicating the topography on the property. This is the high side of the property, and it slopes to the south. Here's a site photo of the existing single-family dwelling looking south. This is standing on Lily Avenue looking west towards the property. This is on the center of the property looking southwest. This is on the west side on Lily looking east into the property. And this is on the central part of the property looking north. The last finding is finding B11, that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. The city engineer has indicated the proposed annexation itself would not adversely affect the surrounding area with regard to traffic, as no traffic is generated from an annexation alone. The Streets and Engineering Department has no objection to the annexation as proposed. Proposed R3 district. The R3 district is intended as a residential area that permits single-family detached housing at a density of 3 dwelling units per gross acre. This district is intended for those areas of the city that are developed at this density or are preferably developed at this density because of the factors such as vehicular access, topography, flood hazard, and landslide hazard. Here's a land use map indicating the land uses. Single-family predominantly surrounds this property, and there's a couple multifamily units to the south. The next item is the PUD, Planned Unit Development. Here's the subject site. PUD request is a residential planned unit development that will allow for 4 new house sites to be developed in the hillside overlay with the following modifications: the lot frontage on the public street requirement and the minimum lot width frontage requirement. Here's a site, the PUD site application indicating how they're proposing to lay out the lots. Single-family lot will stay at the top, open space area here, and the 4 lots here, with 1 lot stubbed in access to this side of Lily, and then 3 lots from this side with a common driveway here. And here's a close-up aerial, a close-up zoom in of that area, showing the driveway access here, and then the common track of the driveway here. There are 7 findings that need to be met in order for planned unit development to be approved. Finding B8A through B8G. First one is B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. As indicated before, it's in the Cherry Hill and stable established. Finding B8B, that the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent properties. There are existing residential uses to the north, south, east, and west of the subject property. The subject site is surrounded by county properties on 3 sides, the north, east, and south sides. Again, just an aerial photograph of the property, indicating that the surrounding uses is predominantly single family. And again, the land use map, and then the next finding, finding B8C. The proposal is or is not compatible with the natural features of the site and the adjoining properties. The applicant has indicated there's no building elevations that are being proposed by the applicant. From the applicant's narrative, the owners will not be building on the lots but selling them for the development, so it is not possible to submit an architectural plan with the PUD. However, it is reasonable to expect that the structures will be 1 to 2 stories, typically residential architecture, possibly with daylight basements. And the natural features of the subject site, it's located on a hillside and has slopes greater than 20%. The hillside overlay requires that the development must retain a calculated portion in the natural state. So here's the topographic map. And part of the hillside overlay ordinance requires 1708 920D retention in the natural state. All development shall retain an area or areas equal to 25% of the total parcel plus the percentage figure of the average slope of the total parcel in the natural state. Lands to be retained in the natural state shall be protected from damage through the use of temporary construction, fencing, or the functional equivalent. For example, if a lot had an average slope of 29%, they would have to keep 25 plus the 29, so 54% of the total lot area shall be retained in the natural state. And this is prior to any development on the lot.
So it is unclear how the proposed development associated with the requested annexation, PUD and subdivision, if approved, would comply with the hillside ordinance due to the steep slopes across the entire property, the need to disturb the property to install wastewater infrastructure, the need to disturb the property to install the common driveway, and the need to disturb requirement for the building sites and driveways. The applicant will need to demonstrate to the Planning Commission how this finding can be met. The next finding is finding B8D. The location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing public facilities and services. City staff from Streets and Engineering, Water and Fire, Parks, and Wastewater Departments have reviewed the application request in regards to public utilities and facilities, and each department has indicated there are adequate public facilities to serve the proposed annexation. The next finding is finding B8E, that the proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space as determined by the commission, no less than 10% of the gross land area free of buildings, streets, driveways, or parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. The applicant is proposing 10% open space. The applicant has indicated the open space will be one large area that will remain in its natural state and is intended as a buffer. So here's the applicant's exhibit, saying the open space is between the single family and the 4 units down here, and it's just going to remain in its native state. So it's unclear how the open space will be planned will be accessible to all users of the proposed development. The 2 southern lots do not provide adequate physical or legal access to get to the proposed open space. The applicant will need to demonstrate to the Planning Commission how this finding is met. Finding B8F, off-street parking does or does not provide sufficient for users of the development. There are no requests made to change the city's off-street parking requirements through the PUD process. Single-family homes will be required to provide 2 off-street paved parking spaces per unit, which is consistent with the code requirements for single-family residential. Finding B8G, that the proposal does or does not provide an adequate method for perpetual maintenance of all common property. The applicant has indicated that common driveway will be placed in a tract commonly owned by lots 2, 3, and 5. A road maintenance agreement for the common driveway and stormwater facilities will be recorded with the final plat. The open space tract will be owned and maintained by owner of Lot 1. And finally, the subdivision, S-1-21. There are 4 findings that need to be met in order for subdivision to be approved, finding B7A through B7D. First one is B7A, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested by the city engineer. The city engineer has indicated the preliminary plat submitted contains all the general preliminary plat requirements by the municipal code. Finding B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are or are not adequate. City staff has indicated that there are adequate public services and facilities available. There are 16 conditions as part of these requests. See page 31 and 33 of the staff report for the full city staff comments. Here's the preliminary plat that was submitted with the application, showing the utilities, where the lots are laid out, the open space, and the tracks. Here's the common driveway, the typical cross-section. Finding B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all of the subdivision design standards contained in Chapter 16.15 and all of the subdivision improvement standards contained in Chapter 16.40 requirements. Per engineering review, the purpose of the preliminary plans and both subdivision design standards and improvement standards have been vetted for compliance. And finally, B7D, the lots proposed in the preliminary plat does or does not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. The R3 zoning district requires that each lot have a minimum of 11,500 square feet. The proposed lot area ranges from 14,000 to 16,000 square feet. The applicant has requested the street frontage requirement through the PUD process. Here's the proposed zoning exhibit. indicating the R3 in the hillside overlay. And there are 16 recommendations to be included in the annexation agreement and PUD and subdivision conditions. I won't read them all, they're at the back of your staff report. I'll read 15 and 16. Prior to approval of the final development plan for the PUD and the subdivision improvement plans, whichever comes first, the owner shall provide documentation to the planning department showing for each of the 4 new lots, the size, slope, disturbance associated with the subdivision improvements. The condition is required to show the developable calculation for each lot per the hillside ordinance in order to ensure that the plattable lots will allow for a viable home sites. And then 16, no site development permit shall be applied for or issued before the above condition has been met. So the decision points and findings tonight, there are 3 findings and separate findings will have to be made for each item, the annexation, the PUD, and the subdivision. And the Planning Commission will need to consider these requests and make separate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions? Go ahead, John.
Mike, good report as always. Appreciate your effort that goes into this. With respect to the PUD part of this, two places in your staff report, B8E, the open space, you use the word unclear. It is unclear. And I think you're saying we need to drill down on that a little bit. And as I look at the open space part of it, I'm not sure about the access and usability of that for all of those 5 different dwellings and whatnot. So there's that one. With respect to the other finding, B8C, making the finding that the proposal is compatible with the natural features of the site, you use the word unclear again. Mm-hmm. And I started, when I saw that word, it troubled me a little bit. And I looked and studied everything that you have in the packet, and I started looking at what it is suggesting, I guess, to me, is that in order to make that finding, that it is compatible with the natural features of the site, it's suggesting that should we have all of the question marks that would be out there relating to the hillside ordinance, geotechnical studies, grading and erosion plans and those sort of things. Should we have more details on all of that instead of what we have is a plan view, a 2-dimensional plan view of 4 little boxes down there. This is kind of chicken or egg kind of a question, kind of a deal here, but how would we approve a PUD on a relatively steep slope without, the geotech study, without the grading plan and all of that done? How can we make that finding without those pieces?
That is a good question. The main thing the staff was always concerned about too was the lot coverage to retain in the natural state. So if it was 54% of the whole lot, and by the time you put in the driveways and infrastructure, how much is actually left for a buildable house?
It's been a long time.
So if we approve something and someone sells a lot, they come back and say, well, I can only build a 100 square foot house because the hillside ordinance made it irrelevant, so I couldn't really build a house. So we want to make sure that the lots that are being created will meet the hillside ordinance.
Granted, there's expense issues. It's not cheap to go hire these studies to be done, the grading plans, the geotechnical work and whatnot, and take these plan level designs to another level, 3 dimensions, and really understand all this. It costs a lot of money to do that, but is that what we would normally get in this scenario? Yeah, for a PUD on a significant slope.
I don't know for a PUD on how far we have to drill down as far as the geotech reports, but as far as the location, how much area is left and retained in the natural state. I think that is the key to this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hear what John's saying. It's been a long time since we had anything with the hillside ordinance. And when the hillside ordinance was adopted, and some of the things I remember when it was adopted is, you know, how many trees you take off, how many you have to put back, what's the erosion control, downhill,
Right.
protection, all those things that come with the hillside ordinance. So I see where John's coming from, saying, all right, we have an annexation, okay, great, come into the city. Okay, and then we have two other items after that, which are directly related to the hillside ordinance. How we've, you know, how we're gonna, whatever that decision might be with the information that we might have or not have according to the hillside ordinance, and I'm sure the applicant can address some of that, but, you know, go ahead. I think there's probably more questions.
I think it's along those lines, and sorry if I'm being redundant, but like B8 or B10 on the annexation, it says the subject property would be annexed into the city under the hillside regulations, requiring average lot slope for determination of validity. So is that related to then B8C, which is the slope?
That is correct, yeah.
So that depends on B8C of the PUD, that finding.
That's right.
Which we don't have any information, and you mentioned in the staff report, it's unclear how they would meet that.
That's correct.
So my follow-on question, so when the city denied this in 2005, it was prior to the comprehensive plan and the hillside ordinance, right? So now we have more specifications and criteria for meeting those
That's correct.
the findings. But so we have more criteria, but we don't have more information from the applicant.
That's right.
So by extension, if we were to approve the annexation to R3, but deny the other two, then we're stuck with an R3 with no real plan? And is there precedent for that? And it's a tricky law, right? So it will always be subject to the hillside ordinance or the hillside overlay. So do we get stuck with an R3 annexation with that, but no, or not stuck, I mean procedurally, like I don't get where, if there's a risk in doing that without having a plan in place for it, does that make sense?
Well, they could certainly annex in with just R3 for just the single lot without a subdivision and PUD, but I don't know that the owner would want to proceed with that. So that is an option, yes. You could recommend that move forward, even separate from the other ones, but they have the option at that point to say, well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to be in the city unless we can
Right.
subdivide and do the project that we want to do.
So basically, we can approve the annexation, have discussion on the other two items, let's say, not approve those two, and then the applicant can withdraw his annexation and say he doesn't want to proceed?
Well, all the planning commission will do is make a recommendation to council on the annexation. It's not really approval or disapproval.
Okay.
Council will make a decision and have to pass an ordinance to annex. And so if the applicant chooses not to go to city council and go through the ordinance process, that would essentially end in the annexation.
Got it.
Go ahead, Peter.
Mr. Chairman, I think this might be a good example of the applicant and our planning department not coming to an agreement on issues. And so they bring it to us to adjudicate it, which we certainly can. But I think in all fairness, that we should ask the applicant and the planning people to come up with some type of common, with an agreement. Because if you leave us to adjudicate it, we're gonna go through a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll do a good job, and we'll make the right decision. But a decision that may be made here should be made back in the planning sessions, you know? So anyway, I'm happy to see this, to see that the planning, they take positions on certain things. I'm disappointed that the applicant and the planning didn't come up to an agreement. But I'll be interested to listen, hear the applicant's response to a couple of these. And probably more basic to me is a PUD, and it's a planned unit development. There's nothing planned here that I can see, you know. But anyway, I'll thank you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be up to the applicant, as our package says, he's got to make some good points on why. this should be an approval. So I guess we'd leave it up to the applicant at this time, to let him come up and do his thing. Hey, Gordon, just state your name and I'll swear you in, and what city you live in.
Gordon Dobler, City of Coeur d'Alene.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go right ahead, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Well, interesting discussion, and I believe I can unwind it for you, but I don't know how to work this computer. Can you show me how to get to the desktop so I can get my PowerPoint?
Oh, go to the, let's see here. So hit that, yep, there you go. They're helping you. They're doing it for you.
Okay. Thank you. Whoever's doing that mysteriously. All right, there you go. You've seen this. There's the annexation part of it. That's an easy one, I think. You basically have R3 that surrounds it. There's the property right there. And there's existing R3. That's what we're coming in at. As a side note, R3 on 3 acres would allow, if you could fit it on there, up to 9 units, and we're asking for 5. So we're well below that density. Well, I can talk a little bit about that in the next one for the subdivision itself, but our proposed lots, as I said, exceed the minimum, well exceed the minimum for the R3. So here's the plat. Uh-oh, how do I go back? There you go. Here's the plat part of it, and some of it obviously is driven by the PUD, but we've got 4 new lots proposed. The remaining lot on the existing house will be 1.5 acres. So that's significant. This house accesses Stanley Hill, and that won't change right now. And by the way, it has a circular driveway, so it actually has 2 accesses. There was one comment about concern about this driveway being accessed on a corner, but it has the ability to drive through, which is, it's always been that way and won't change here. These 3 lots would access through a common driveway, which is one of the reasons for the PUD. Common driveway tract would sit right off the end of Lily, and then you'd have 3 short driveways to access these 3 lots here. This lot, the driveway will come off of Lily East, or West rather. We also have, again, this common open space, which is about 1/3 of an acre, which is the 10% required by the PUD. There were some concerns about additional traffic. There's only going to be 3 homes that would access Lily East, and the traffic generated by 3 homes would be roughly, in the peak hour, 1 car every 20 minutes. So I think we could safely say that that's minimal impact. Existing house, of course, is being required to hook to sewer, so we have a sewer lateral coming down the side from the future sewer. I'll talk to utilities here in a second. No through street, so I think in the past I understand there's been some concerns about opening this up to through traffic, an existing neighborhood. That's not what we're proposing, obviously. We think this is much more sensitive and much less impact. Sewer comes from West Lily, comes along the southerly side and up the side, and then there's a lateral that comes here and a lateral that comes there. I'll come back to the other questions about the amount disturbed with the PUD here in a second, but we come back to this slide. So the PUD is driven by, again, 2 things. Not all lots have frontage on public streets, and there's 3 that do, and those 3 are substandard for the R3 zone. So that drives the need for the PUD. And I'll just say that I think this is a much better plan than a through street. It's more sensitive. So we have, again, the open space tract right now, sits up here. That's just a simple configuration. This is really the first I've heard from staff about access of all 4 lots, actually 5 lots to the open space, so clearly 3 have access to it. It wasn't my understanding that all the lots have to have access. Is that, Mike, are you saying that's the case?
That's one of the findings, yeah.
That's one of the requirements for a PUD.
That all the lots have
All
to have
users of that
access?
project have access to the open space.
Okay. That's certainly not unsolvable by any means. It's just a little disconcerting that I'm standing here at the planning commission meeting finding that out. But again, I don't think that's unsolvable at all. Certainly, there can be easements, we can craft that. That's not, I guess my specific answer to that is we could certainly dedicate access easements to this open space and even some minor reconfiguration to make that happen. With the subdivision approved for 4 lots, there can be minor changes to that at staff level to accommodate access to that open space tract. In fact, that could end up as really a condition from the planning commission that we work with staff to get dedicated easements or reconfigure the open space tract such that all 5 lots have access to it. I don't see that as a problem. There's enough area here. The common driveway in this tract would be maintained by the 3 lots that access it. So just to speak directly to this issue of the hillside, we're certainly aware of it and certainly understand it. There'll be two issues here. The first one is what does this development actually disturb when we build what's necessary, the infrastructure? Well, I guess I would like to say clearly it's less than the 50%, not even close. You've got, literally a sewer trench. It's not going to be the width of the easement. Here, you'd have a sewer trench here, so, and one here. The water comes in this, along the common driveway, and the common driveway itself sits inside this tract. So I think it's obvious by inspection, just looking at what's going to be disturbed by this development, that it would be way less than, not even close to approaching the 54%. Or I haven't even done the math. That's an example, but it'll be close to it because the slope, the average slope across the property is about 20%. So we're going to be in that. Half of it has to be undisturbed. Then when the individual lots come through, I understand and agree with staff's concern that, well, gee, are we creating lots that really can't be developed under the hillside ordinance? I think that's the question. And the answer is, well, technically no. I mean, it's obviously no or not. I guess I'm a little lost as to how that isn't obvious, but you would say we've got 14,000 square feet here, all right? And you've got a 12-foot driveway, 100 feet long, there's 1,200 square feet, and you've got a house that's 2,000 square feet or some number. We're not even getting close to, say, a 7,000, that would be half of a 14,000. I guess my point is that analysis takes place at a building permit. So at a 14 to 16,000 square foot lot, it's not going to restrict the size of a house that can be put on here when you put a driveway on it. So I think staff has a condition to say, okay, before we finalize this, we'll just need to put numbers to it And it would be that kind of analysis to say, at this point, we're not gonna land a house and we're not gonna land the size of a floor plan. We'd simply would demonstrate that, all right, you're gonna have a driveway come up here. When somebody comes in for a building permit, you're gonna have a driveway come up here and you're gonna have a house. You've got setbacks that have to be met all the way around. That's a given, and those are gonna generate, a certain amount of square footage that can't be modified. So I think for the planning commission to say, yes, staff will work this out, and again, by inspection on a 14 to 16,000 square foot lot, you're easily gonna have enough for a 3,000 square foot footprint, which is a reasonable size for a house. And then that gets carried through to building permit. The geotech concerns, those are all addressed at building permit, because the impacts aren't here yet. You don't know what you need to address the geotech concern until you know what you're building, and that's in the hillside ordinance. I guess finally I would say there was some comments from the public about, again, most of them have lived around here and would like to see this continue as a nature preserve, and I understand that, but it's private property. There was some question about surface water or subsurface water. That's all addressed at building permit, and there are fixes for those. These houses adjacent to it have developed with significant cuts in the back slope. So groundwater, as you know, can be easily addressed. There were no indications that there's any surface water. There is a 2-inch pipe that drains an off-site. It's actually unknown what it drains off-site, but it flows part of the season. Again, it's not water generated from this property, it comes from off-site, so that can be addressed. The owner plans to basically cut and cap that. But generally speaking, when a house comes in, there'll be a geotech report that will address any surface or subsurface water and how those be handled. When we build this common driveway, we'll address that. We'll have actually on the pavement, we'll have that go to a swale with the dry well. So any water that it intercepts will be dealt with in the swale and the dry well. That's really all I have. I would entertain questions from the Planning Commission, specifically on this issue of adequate coverage, or whatever questions you may have.
Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Gordon. Getting more comfortable with the coverage. I think you spoke to that well. Where I'm maybe struggling, maybe the others as well. We've seen a lot of little PUDs lately.
Yeah.
Little pocket PUDs. Some of these little donut holes in the city, we've brought them in, we've annexed them, made little PUDs out of them. Recent one at Honeysuckle and Kathleen. Quirky site, you might know it. It's got a pipeline easement goes right through it. So, the whole notion, as I understand the PUD, is, rather than develop conventionally by standards, cookie cutter, by right, pull a building permit, you come in with a PUD. In that case, it was a good use of a PUD because it had a real quirky site, pipeline going right through it. And so, at the end of the day, does the cluster approach yield a better result than trying to do it conventionally, straight up? In that case, even with the pipeline running through it and, things are kind of clustered around, as you can imagine, instead of just cookie cutter, it had to get tweaked around a little bit, you know, keep the open thing diagonally through it, to throw another loop to it. That made a lot of sense to me. But when we saw the drawing at this level, it becomes, as I understand it, legal planning. It's something that we lock in at this stage, you know, so we want to see a sufficient level of detail, as I understand it, such that, you know, away we go. We're going to come back. This looks to me a bit like a representative view, you know. I mean, there's not a lot of architectural thought into exactly how those road drives and the house orientation might flip or whatnot. So how locked in are we or aren't we?
So, sorry.
In that. So, I mean, back to my one, I painted that picture at this other site, and I asked that question. You know, we're pretty locked in, as I understand it. So that person can't, you know, do a whole lot of tweaking around without it coming back here, I guess. So are we comfortable approving something that we know would have I think it would have to have a fair amount of tweakage down the road? And how does that get resolved?
So good question. Let's unwind that a little bit. The PUD is not approving any of this. PUD doesn't have anything to do with these houses or the locations, driveways, any of that. That's not the PUD at all. Two separate, complete issues. The PUD is allowing this common driveway to service this lot and these two lots. And it's allowing these lots to be created with what amounts to about 30 feet of frontage. And this lot to be created with 60 feet of frontage. That's it. Done. That's what you're talking about, the PUD. It has nothing to do with any of this stuff that we've drawn on here, period.
And I'm not being argumentative, other than just saying, from the experience of seeing a lot of other ones, we interact with them as though we are locking in details. We look at where a trail comes through that's usable open space, and we want to make sure it's something that's usable, it adds value to the development. So we are making, I think, qualitative kind of decisions based on a representation of what the PUD amenities and such are at this level.
So, yeah, you make a good point, and I stand a little bit corrected, because the open space tract is part of the PUD. It's a result of it, and we've put it here. And again, a little bit chagrined about the condition that says, well, all these lots have to access it. Okay, that's not unsolvable. So that part is PUD. And I think it would probably be, I would stop short of saying we could, completely reconfigure the open space tract, because that's not, I think we walk away from here with not knowing what the final product is, and I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think the Planning Commission should be either. So to solve the accessibility to this open space tract, I don't see why we couldn't put a condition on that says we would have to provide through access easements, access from these two lots to that open space tract. I don't see that as difficult at all. And that solves the issue, to say, all right, these two lots can get to that open space tract this way. I have to wonder, this open space tract is basically natural. We're not really planning. I mean, we've had a lot of discussion about preservation and not disturbing anything, so no, we're not going to disturb it. We're not planning on putting benches or anything there. It would be just a buffer, and certainly with an access easement, it can be used and should be used as a passive use. Walk dogs, go up, enjoy the trees, whatever someone would do with that. But I certainly don't think the idea, especially after the discussions tonight, is to develop this in any way, shape, or form. We want to leave it natural as it is, trees and everything.
Go ahead.
So normally that would be the case, right, for a PUD, but because of the hillside ordinance and finding B8C in the PUD, we have to meet the code section about retention in the natural state. And so it's not just the lots, but it's the disturbance to like develop and build and establish the infrastructure. I mean, that's
So
how,
you're-
that's how
yeah.
it's listed in the PUD, which normally wouldn't be the case except for the hillside has specific findings that have to be met now, but they don't have that level of detail yet, which I understand. So I'm still stuck on, we have to make a finding, but we don't have the data to do that for the PUD. Am I wrong that we?
No, and that's the challenge that you saw that staff had in the staff report. I mean, we, normally, if you look at the application for a PUD, we get a lot more details, including artistic renderings of, you know, what are the homes gonna look like, and so this is an unusual application that came in that didn't have all those details, and so, I guess.
And the
Hold on.
access to the open space, hold on, Gordon, what does the access mean? Gravel road, just a walkable trail? Since this is what Gordon pointed out, you know, he's just been aware of that all these lots have to be access to that open space. So what is the condition, depending on where this goes, that we could say, all right, you have to have access to it? What does the access mean? Because this is a very sloped area, it's got a lot of trees on there, so how does that access point get to that open space? What would be the requirement for that, if, however, we decide where this goes? So answer that for me, first of all.
It's tricky because it is a slope site, so I guess that's kind of up to Gordon and the applicant if this project gets approved to figure out how does that become viable access so people can get to the open space to use it.
Okay,
And there's no requirement that it has to be paved or, you know, steps or whatnot. It doesn't have to be ADA compliant, but it has to be truly that it can't just be fenced off and that, you know, the users, all those lots can't have access to it. Did you have anything, Randy?
And then as far as the PUD goes, even though we have 4 L-shaped lots, let's call it houses, we're not looking at that as part of the PUD. According to what Gordon said, we're more looking at the driveways and stuff, so I'm a little confused on that one. So if you can explain that.
So that's in the applicant's submittal. They've asked for us to not include, or they didn't want to include the renderings or some of those details because they said it's up to the future buyers. But for all the PUDs previously, we've had that level of detail. You kind of set the design standards for the PUD project. You're kind of locking some of those things in.
Right, and we were tied into that, as John said. Here's the design, whatever that design might be. Here's how many lots, here's our roads, here's the sewer, here's our water, here's everything that goes along with the PUD. This is a little bit definitely different.
Well,
I just want to make some
differ. It's
clarity,
not-
so
I
when we
mean,
come down to a decision point, the commissioners, to have that discussion, we're clear on what decision we make, whether it's yes or no, that everyone here has the right information, the applicant has the right information, and that we're not just gonna make a decision and then go, oops, wait a minute, what happened here? So, go ahead, Gordon.
So-
Or Lynn, go ahead.
Into the city, that's the first step. The second step is they're trying to get a vision in order to sell this property. That's really the end goal here. They're not going to build this, they're not gonna pave it, they're not gonna do that work. They're hoping to sell to a developer and let them decide what this becomes. But we can't theoretically approve something that we have no grasp of what it really will turn out to be. That's the challenge here.
I think that's what staff is
Yeah,
struggling
it's
with.
too anomalous. It just
but-
doesn't have any form. We have intent, but we don't know who the developer will be, how they will set this, and how do we hold on to that developer and make sure that they do meet our standards. And it's a handoff, and we're not in a position to do a handoff when it's just so amorphous. I can see bringing it into the city, but we can't guarantee you that there will be, 5 lots in a green space. I think that's what we're saying. We just don't have enough meat on the table.
Well, one of the conditions, which stands out to me, is that the applicant has to prove to the planning commission that there's that open space. And as we're sitting here talking, and I asked the question, the access to that open space, now that it has to be the 4 lots, or the 5 lots, however you want to say that, that hasn't been determined because of the fact that it's a slope lot, and that one is the main consideration here, that it says the applicant has to prove, or, show us that, yeah, we can do that, regardless of everything else. Whether you got the squares on there or you don't have it. So if the applicant at this point in time can't say, how are we going to get to that open space, since he wasn't aware that all 4 lots had to be there, we're sitting here, are we wasting our time? Are we wasting the applicant's time?
Mr. Chair,
Do we have enough information to do anything? And that's probably a discussion that'll come up. But I just need to make sure we're all on the same page here, that this new open space access is
Yeah,
a key factor here.
let's focus, whatever. I'm as frustrated as you. So
I
first
can
of all,
tell.
this idea of bringing forward renderings of houses, what's that all about?
You don't have a developer. There's no one,
Well, I
there's
know,
no
we're
builder
not,
on board.
we're not required to do that.
Right, there's no builder currently.
No, builder, no builder, anything. These houses aren't part of the PUD. It's just simply the common driveway, and I've given typical sections and blah, blah, blah. So we're not giving the houses. The hillside ordinance itself has specific regulations for siding, colors. That's in the hillside that these have to conform to. So you have that level of requirement in any house that's built in a hillside overlay. Coverage. That's in the hillside overlay. We can't exceed it. So I think we are spinning our wheels. I mean, if nothing else, for me to stand here and find that, okay, we need to access the open space tract, I would say, I can't stand here and do that, and I don't know that I'm comfortable with the condition to work with staff, because I don't know how much it's gonna tweak the subdivision layout at this point.
Well,
So-
and if I'm correct, the conditions are tied into the preliminary plat, is that correct?
How we have it is that they would be for all 3, so that
Okay.
it would be included in the annexation agreement if the council chooses to include those, and then would be conditions for the PUD and subdivision if approved.
And
So-
that one that stands out again is just the access to the
Yeah.
4 lots, so.
Sure.
I'm all for a conversation and continuing, that's great.
Mr.
I just wanted to
Mr. Chair,
put it
I
out
have a,
there.
Mr. Chair, I think maybe that might be the issue.
Go ahead.
is
And I-
the
and I have a
difference of
comment as well,
definition
Mr.
of
Chair.
PUD. Mr. Dover says here, we are requesting PUD in order to allow deviations from the requirement to have all lots front on public streets. That's why he's requesting for the PUD. No other reason, I assume. And that is not our definition of, that's not my definition of a PUD. Pick and PUD provides certain things, let's pick a thing out of the PUD and plop it down here and say, we want a PUD because of this particular item. I think it might be a difference of view between Mr. Dober and the city or and us, what a PUD is.
Okay.
It just,
Mr. Chair?
Again, can I just make a suggestion?
Sure.
So, can we table this and give me a month or whatever to work with staff?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion we table this for 2 months.
Well, let's ask staff, legal, applicant. Go ahead.
We can, you can do that. I agree, 2 months would be better since we have a full meeting in April, so we need, to
And
be
you
able
also, you
to.
also have the strategic plan and so forth.
Correct.
3 months be better?
Oh.
Or we can find without, what is it, without recourse or without
It's up to
prejudice, we can
staff
do
and the
that.
applicant, the time frame. That's,
Yeah, so Randy, I guess, had a question about just the annexation request itself, if you
We
wanted.
do the annexation.
And I guess that's up to the applicant too, if you wanted to have that one move ahead, or you want to do it all as a
You
package
guys
deal.
are right. I mean, if we can't get this worked out, we're done. Why would we annex?
Right.
I mean, seriously, you guys, this is probably, some form of this is the only reasonable way to subdivide that property. We're not gonna bring a street through, we're gonna come through, you know, I think we can still do 4 lots.
All right, well,
But maybe even that changes depending on what we work out with staff. Anyway,
I would, that's, my suggestion would be, and this is just me talking, if you want to table this, Gordon, that's fine, you know, just give us some direction and we can make some sort of motion to do that. Whether or not we put a timeline on it or not is different. I think you know, and if it does come back at some point in time, I think you've got enough of comments right now to understand the next time you come back, if it's similar to this, I think the comments might be the same. So I think it'll give you some time to maybe iron out some issues or whatever that's good for you or the owners of the property to best fit what's gonna be on that, so.
So if we table it, do we need to specify what level of detail in fairness to them and to, so we know what to look for when we come back? Like how exactly it'll meet the hillside ordinance?
I think the question to staff is what we have to do to table this, all 3 items. And the question also was, do we give direction now to saying the level of detail, if it does come back, what we'd be looking for? How do we work that out?
You certainly can. And would they need to make just one motion, or should they do 3 motions since there's
No, they
3
can
items?
do one,
Just
they can do one
to
motion,
table it
and
all.
really
Motion
the,
indicating each one of the item numbers, tabling it for a future date.
that would be the way I think you can do that. And really, the guidance is in the ordinances themselves, in terms of what does somebody have to present for a PUD. And I think Gordon's right, there isn't a great deal of detail that's required at this point. It mostly comes at the development stage.
Okay?
But I would say the direction to staff should be to work with him on what the code requires to be presented.
The code within the hillside ordinance, more so.
The whole thing,
Oh,
the
whole
PUD
thing.
and the hillside ordinance
Okay.
and the subdivision ordinance.
And you could table it date certain, so what did you say, that's 11th? May 11th. So if you do it that way, then we don't have to mail out all the notices again. I know there's neighbors that are
Okay.
watching tonight. We could certainly, you know, send them emails of people that commented of the new date. Or we could table it and then figure out the date and then notice that.
Okay, go ahead, Gordon.
I think May 11th is plenty of time. If we can't figure it out before then,
Yeah, we
I'm
have
seriously broke.
we have a pretty heavy calendar on the next meeting. We don't want to overload some of the commissioners. So, if that date's agreeable, and, what about, if we table this right now, any of the people who signed up, back at that next date?
Correct, yeah. That's, I think, how we would proceed, right? Just to do that now rather than carry out the rest of this hearing. Doesn't make
Correct.
sense.
Okay. Okay. So, go right ahead,
So
John.
if I could, kind of along the line of Commissioner Mandel's comment with, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not studying the ordinance level and getting a legal interpretation. I'm just saying we're accustomed to seeing PUDs. We've seen a lot of them over the last few years. And we talk about, we look at the little pictures and, you know, it says there's gonna be a little dog park over here and a this over there. That last presentation from the apartments, that wasn't a PUD, but if it was, you know, it showed a dog park up in the corner. Why, that's a locked-in deal, kinda, you know, so it might change 10 feet. Great, staff can say later on, that's great, but I think we've, whether we're entitled or not, or accustomed to getting a level of comfort at this PUD stage, a little bit more, I would like to see, we'll see what the others say, with respect to kind of some flow. Is there a trail or some way, if you're not just an easement, that's words. But I'd feel a little better if Lot 3 down here, I can see how he goes up a little trail or what, and maybe there should be a bench up there. I don't know. I'd have Mike weigh in. Usually we have a little statement, you know, in our staff report that says, you know, we've had this discussion and workshop and yada, yada over the years. we've wrestled with qualitatively what open space is. I appreciate your point that the neighbors are sensitive to open space. The owner wants to preserve it, that's great. I don't think it ought to change a whole lot, but I think we've landed on a notion that there needs to be some usability. And so I think Lot 3 needs to be able to get up there, and when he gets up there, maybe he doesn't need a bench to sit on, or a little box, raised box planter that he can grow his tomatoes. I don't know. It's something like that. Maybe.
Well, I'm not
Okay.
totally unversed in those PUD discussions,
You know,
as you might imagine.
Right, I think the discussion should be, Gordon, the applicant and staff, define, what a PUD is, what it is a PUD, what he wants to bring back the next time, what he wants to do with open space, definition of how do you access to the open space now that I think everybody's kind of on the same page. So, that being said, I'd like to have a motion so we could,
I'll make a
Chair, I
motion.
move we table it to May 11th.
well, if we can make that motion stating the three items,
If you could
that
just
would
list
be
those
very
3 item
helpful.
numbers.
Yeah.
Just modify it,
Peter, all you
please.
gotta do is read the three
I
items.
just filed my things away, so I'll let somebody else make the motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Lynn, go ahead.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on March 9th, 2021, and there being present a person requesting approval of 3 items. Item A2-21, PUD 2-21, and S 2-21. The applicant is Eugene and Nancy Hogg Living Trust. Location is 2248 East Stanley Hill Road, Kootenai County. That we will, in fact, table these 3 items and will, at date specific, reassess them in the same format, meeting our requirements on May 11th, 2021.
Good, okay. I have a motion, I need a second.
Second?
Can I have a roll call on that motion? Shannon, please.
Fleming,
Yes.
Ingalls,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutrip,
Yes.
Rumpler.
Yes.
Okay, motion is to move this hearing till the next, what date was that?
May 11th.
May 11th. Okay, well, thank you
5:30.
for your time.
There.
Well, hopefully, we'll clear this matter up the next time, and thank you for the residents that have been sitting here this long, and hopefully the next time, we'll move ahead.
I move to adjourn.
Well, there's no comments, not that you couldn't make a comment, but
beginning.
how can I say this, that there's really no hearing now anymore because this particular item has been tabled. So comments would have to be at the date that we set for the next planning meeting for this item.
And what we'll get next time will be something different than what we have now. So whatever comments you may have now may be different than the comments you'll have when we get the final product before.
And just be, Hillary, there won't be any new notices being sent out, or?
No, so when we do this, when you table at date certain, you don't
Okay.
have to do the renoticing.
So just, if you do want to come back and talk, just make sure you come back on the date that's been set for this hearing again, which is 2 meetings from today.
Well, can't we, if that's the case, if they want to talk, let's get their names and make sure that you're going to notify people that you already have received information.
Correct.
So get these people so they're notified too, because we want to make sure everybody is notified that wants to testify, written or verbally, in person.
But I just want to make clear, it's not going to be putting the normal process in the paper again
Correct.
or anything like that.
Right.
It's
Should
more
we-
or less amongst yourselves to make sure that you realize that the next meeting is going to be the date that we just mentioned. Okay? Sure, you can ask a, yeah.
Mr. Chair, if you're going to do this, they should come up to the
Yeah, come
podium
on
at
up
the
to the
very
podium,
least.
and if you just have a question that has nothing to do with this, I'll allow it real quick.
You sent out a notice and told us that there were only 15 seats and that we should communicate, do it viral or stay home or listen to the meeting. Only 3 of us showed up. There was many more who would have come. Will all of them all the people who are interested be welcome at this meeting to physically come here to make a statement on May 15th or May 11th. And will there be enough seats? Or will we be told to stay home again like we were tonight?
I would have to address that to staff and I guess whatever the state requirement is for.
Right, and that's
COVID
where kind of it is right
restrictions.
now. So the group size has been increased to 50, and we're still trying to maintain the social distancing. If everyone wanted to attend the May 11th meeting, we could certainly have people wait outside, because there's going to be multiple hearing items, so maybe we can have some people stand outside if there isn't adequate space. Randy, how do you feel
Because
about that?
and Randy, can you clarify when it says 15 or 10 or 20, what that actually means? It's not so much people sitting in the audience, it's all of us as well. So if that number 15, and there's 10 of
50
us,
was it?
or how many people?
The new limit is 50 total, but
Right.
I think on our notice, we said there's about 15 seats in the public, which is what we've been doing for council and
Okay.
commission meetings. So I think that was the
So
number that gentleman
maximum
was referencing.
50 people in the room, but they still maintain
At the same time.
the social distancing. And this is the configuration that somebody at the city has determined is appropriate.
But Zoom will remain available as long as we have those
And,
constraints.
and
correct?
as Hillary mentioned, people can be outside. Hopefully, the weather will be nicer on May 11th, and they can be brought in as people leave. We can make that arrangement.
So to answer your question, yes, more people could come. Whether or not they'll be in the room during the meeting or shuffle in and out during the meeting, that's yet to be seen. But they're certainly welcome to come.
Thank you.
Sir,
You're welcome.
Make sure, it's clear that we want to have testimony. You know, we don't want to limit this. We want to have as many people talk as possible. What limits it is COVID restrictions, but you can be outside. Our goal, our job is to get input from everybody, from
That's
the
fine.
applicants and so forth. And maybe maybe it wouldn't hurt to re-advertise this. I mean,
We could certainly at least do the mailing again.
So-
I mean,
yeah,
that
I
might be
would
the
think-
easiest versus having to do the publication and all that.
just if there's a course.
That would be good.
I'll leave that up to staff to decide how the word's
We'll
going
work
to get
through
out.
that with legal and figure out the best way to do it.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay? Thank
Thank
you.
you.
He
I have a
seconded.
motion to adjourn.
He seconded.
Second.
I have first, I have second, all in favor?
Yep.
Aye. All right.
Outta here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to say something? Come on.
Oh, he wants to talk.
All right, come on up, even though the meeting's over,
Don't
but
usually have open
if
forum.
it's not pertaining to any of the hearing items.